The wrecking yard is gonna make the kids alright. We're having all the fun until the day is done. The wrecking yard is gonna make the kids alright. We're having all the fun until the day is done. You won't know what hit you till the cows come in the yard. Come on down to the wrecking yard. The wrecking yard is gonna make the kids alright. We're having all the fun until the day is done. The wrecking yard is gonna make the kids alright. We're having all the fun until the day is done. You won't know what hit you till the cows come in the yard. Come on down to the wrecking yard.
Hi, welcome to another episode of The Wrecking Yard. My name is Tony. I'm the head cheese around here. Today's episode is a really long one, but if you're interested in the subject matter, I think it'll be worth your time. My guest today is Tim Boykin of the Lolas, the Shame Idols, and several other bands who I can't remember right off the bat, but you'll hear about them in the show. This was a really special episode for me because the Lolas have been one of my very favorite bands since I first heard Silver Dollar Sunday. I used to tell people, if somebody said, hey, what do they sound like? I would say, well, if Paul McCartney and Brian Wilson were in The Who, that's pretty much what it sounds like, and I'm going to stick to that. Now, what's kind of funny about this is that I knew virtually nothing about Tim before I got there because the Lola's web presence is not exactly far and wide. So they were always a bit of a mystery to me. And when I say they, I mean basically him, because I think he is responsible for about 90% of all the Lola's recordings, save for maybe the first album, Ballerina Breakout. All this information will come out in the podcast, so I'm not going to try to give too much here. This was my first trip to Birmingham, Alabama. Now, I had some preconceived notions, although being from Indiana, I probably had no right to have preconceived notions. I have to say, for all the shit that the Deep South gets whenever I go there, the people are always great, the food is always wonderful, and this was no exception. On this trip, me and longtime Wrecking Yard intern Birmingham Woody first stopped at Bob Gibson's Barbecue for my first foray into white barbecue sauce, which I have to say I also had reservations about, but one bite and I was convinced. If you're ever down that way, go to Bob Gibson's. You will not be disappointed. Unless you're a vegetarian, in which case you'll be very disappointed. When I first contacted Tim and asked him if he'd be willing to be a guest on the show, he said, sure, but can I bring my wife with me because she goes with me everywhere? My first thought, of course, was, is this going to be a Yoko situation? But it could not have been further from the truth. Tim was a great guest and really shed some light on a lot of questions that I had. And his wife Marjorie just turned out to be as nice a person as you could possibly have imagined. She not only supplied us with a good place to record the show, but she also manned the computer to do some fact checking along the way, and was both extremely helpful and extremely charming throughout the whole ordeal. Me and Birmingham Woody both felt that when we left Alabama, we left having made a couple of new friends. Now, when I mention the Lolas, basically it's just Tim. So sometimes when I say they, I should say he. What's funny is the Lolas had not put out an album, a proper album, since Dr. Apache in 2006. An album that I pretty much wore out during a half of a summer I spent on Long Island house sitting. It was virtually the only record I listened to for about a month and a half. And then nothing. There was just like radio silence on the Lola's front until right before this interview, he released an album called A Dozen or Seven Tapestries, which, after all this time, you couldn't be faulted into thinking, well, maybe he's lost it. But no, he hasn't lost it. It's a great record. And the funny thing is, about a month after this interview, he contacted me and said, hey, I just recorded another whole album. And guess what? It's also really good. The newest album is called Bulletproof, and both of them can be found on the various streaming sites. But if you want to give money to a musician, you can get hard copies from Tim directly. Look him up on Facebook, contact him. He's a nice guy, don't be afraid. He'd love to sell you some CDs. Now, you may have noticed that there was a new theme song at the beginning of the podcast. I asked him, I said, hey, would you be willing to maybe do a short version of Down in the Wrecking Yard? He gave it a shot. I think we both came to the conclusion that the original song was immune to melody. And so what did he do? He contacts me and says, hey, I'll just write you a new theme. Couple hours later, texts me back and says, hey, here it is. And my God, if it's not catchy as all hell. I played it for a couple people. It's gotten rave reviews, and I think you're going to like it too. And if you like the way it sounds, then you need to look into getting some of these records, because, you know, he doesn't reinvent the wheel. He just makes a really, really good wheel. So you're going to hear some weird creative editing somewhere in the middle of the podcast. This was both of us realizing that we had a mutual acquaintance that both of us had mixed feelings about, and we just didn't want to take up 20 minutes in the middle of the podcast with us talking about why. So if you hear a couple of weird jumps, that's why. And no, I'm not going to tell you who it was. I would again like to extend a huge thank you to both Tim and Marjorie Boykin. If you guys are ever up Indiana way, I will make sure that you're treated well, get some good food, and meet some cool people. Thank you to everybody who listens to this podcast. This may be the last one for a while for various reasons I'm not going to go into, but hopefully I'll return sometime towards the end of the summer. We shall see. I really hope you enjoy this one. If you're a fan of the Lolas already, man, you're going to find out a lot of stuff you probably did not already know, and hopefully in an entertaining fashion. Here it is, my talk with Tim Boykin.
Okay, I'm just kidding. You don't be that
Man, I want to say I really appreciated that. Like you wrote like a really sort of lengthy thing about the Lola stuff, and that was just really fantastic, and really appreciated.
Well, it was from the heart, because I have been, well, you know, I'm already recording. I'll edit all this stuff later, but I've always been a huge power pop fan, and and when I was younger, you know, when riding on the bus, you know, we'd hear stuff like Edison Lighthouse and
Sure.
1, 2, 3 Red Light and all this stuff, and that's the stuff that I kind of grew up, you know, that kind of made my brain go.
Right.
So whenever I hear something that rocks hard and yet still has that sort of poppy feel to it,
sure,
I'm drawn to it. Well, my uncle knew this, and he gave me the Not Lame catalog once. He goes, hey, I think there's probably a bunch of stuff in here you're going to like.
Oh, is that Bruce Brodeen?
Yeah. This was way back in like 99, 2000.
Sure.
And then I went to the website, and there it was, and I was like, oh, I can listen to some of this stuff. Now, Bruce is a great guy.
Yeah.
But like I said in that article, I think he likes everything.
Right.
So sometimes it was kind of hard to figure it out. So, and what made me kind of mad is every time he had an audio sample, it would always cut off before the chorus, and I'd go like, well, wait a minute, I want to hear the chorus. You know, that's what I'm heading for. But it always cut off right before the chorus. So I would always have a good idea what was
trap you in that way.
Yeah, but you never knew exactly. So, but anyway, my first couple of Not Lame orders that I did, I was batting 1,000. It was like Miracle Bra, the Shazam, Cherry Twister.
Oh, Shazam knew those guys. Yeah,
I mean, you know, I just got like all this good stuff at once, and then he had your album, the second one,
Silver
Dollar Sunday, and I was like, well, you know, that sounds like it's right up my alley. So I ordered it. And I was like, immediately, it was my favorite one of the whole bunch I got out of that first batch. And I listened to that sucker like non-stop. Non-stop. And you probably don't remember this, but I actually wrote you an email right after I got that.
Oh, wow.
And I had asked you some questions.
Gosh, when did that come out, like 2001?
Yeah, it's a long time
ago.
Yeah. And the thing was, you had almost no internet presence whatsoever. I was like looking for a website. I was looking for this, looking for that, looking for some information. There was like nothing. I was like, man, this guy's kind of a man of mystery or something. So, and then a couple of years passed, And then I got Something You Ought to Know, which is my favorite one.
Oh, wow.
I love
cool.
them all, but that's my favorite one specifically.
Oh, that's
and I
really
listened
cool.
to that for an entire summer. Now, this was during a summer that I had the weirdest job in the world.
Yeah.
I lived in California for 10 years, and I was working as a background actor.
Where in California?
Hollywood.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and there was an actors or a writer strike, so there was no background acting work to be had.
Yeah.
But we were just getting ready to go into Iraq, and
yeah.
so the U.S. Marines built a fake Iraqi village out in the middle of the desert, and they hired about 1,000 of us to go out there and live for like a week at a time.
Oh, wow.
And that's when I was listening to that constantly out there while I was wearing my dish dash and my headdress and everything, like walking around. And they would like practice arresting us, and they would.
Oh my God.
It was the weirdest job ever. There were no toilets.
Yeah.
No toilets. It was just these little portalettes everywhere. No running water. There was just a giant, what they called a water buffalo in the middle of the village. You go out there and you get whatever
That
water
was just
you
like
needed.
a gig you picked up?
It paid really well.
Okay.
But like I was telling her with her job, a paycheck's a paycheck.
Yeah.
You do what you got to do. So we were out in the desert for like 6 days in a row. All we did was just wander around and let them arrest us.
Oh my God.
They would practice arresting us.
That's
and they would shoot us sometimes.
Okay.
They had these little chalk tip bullets that when they hit you, they'd leave like a little chalky thing. Yeah. And
Can we cuss?
oh yes.
Okay.
Say anything you want.
Because I started to say, holy shit.
Oh yeah, say all the shit you want. So and I'll tell you a funny story. The first week that we were there, they didn't understand how often they would have to empty the portalettes because they hadn't done it before, and so they didn't call anybody to come empty them. So like after about a week, there was this portalette in our section of the village that was like up above the toilet seat, like this mountain, and everybody was using it anyway, just like going around it. It's just as gross as it sounds.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that's
it's
pretty
gonna get
damn
worse.
interesting.
It's gonna get worse. So
Okay.
this one guy goes, I can't take it anymore, and he grabbed a garbage bag. He went out to the thing, put the bag over the top of it, and he pushed it all down so that it made like this concave bowl of poop under the seat. And that's what everybody used for like the next 2 days.
That was the sound of me striking a surface.
So anyway, so Something You Ought to Know was the soundtrack to that summer for me.
Man, that's God, because I haven't sat down and listened to that album in a long time, but that song, I mean, there's some real up songs on that album, but there's some real down songs on that album too.
Well, I mean, I'm a big Star fan, of course.
Okay.
So, and Light Up Every Doorway, I think, is one of the most gorgeous songs I've ever heard.
Oh wow, thanks.
Yeah, I don't know if that's one of the ones you like or don't like.
Yeah, no.
But,
I mean, I was real happy with the way that one came out.
Now, do you produce everything yourself?
Man, I recorded that, like that particular album. I recorded that album all on my own. I had some people come in and guest. I had a couple of people. I played drums on some of it, and then I had I'm not a proper drummer, but in a controlled studio type situation, you can make things work. And I had some pro drummers, friends of mine, come in and play on it. But yeah. All the instrumentation, like all of that, I did all that just in the basement of a little house I was renting in Irondale.
So if somebody references the Lolas, they just basically mean you, right?
It's always been a record project. There's been some really great people on it, and there's been a couple of lineups where there was like a functioning band that would go and gig and stuff. There's not one right now. It's just me right now.
But you played Japan recently, didn't you? Like within the last few years?
In 2016, went over there. What we did about that is my very good old friend Brad Quinn, who played with me in an 80s band called Carnival Season when we were young men. He lives in Japan, and he's lived there for a very long time. He's raised up a family over there. And anyway, just in conversation, he was like, well, man, let's do a Lola's tour. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, great. So what we did was he played bass on it. He knew this stuff. We threw in some Carnival Season songs. Carnival Season has a small cult following in Japan anyway. And so we did that, and we hired a friendly and professional acquaintance of Brad, Hitoshi Bando, a Japanese drummer. And so we just did the tours, 3-piece like that. So, and we just said, yeah, we're the Lolas.
You don't do a lot of touring in general, though, do you?
I haven't. I mean, I have done a good bit of touring. I've traveled all over the country over a long course of time, and traveled up into Canada, and done 2 Japan tours. But here for a long time. I mean, I really got off the road. I continued to travel, but I really got off the road, like where you stay out on the road, in the early 90s.
Uh-huh.
I had been doing a good bit of that, and I was just tired of being broke. And I started playing in a local blues band, and like up until that time, and I was a young man still. This was in the early 90s, and I was still a young man. Up until that time, I had always just played in rock band projects where you have tunes worked up, and you shop labels and get a deal or whatever, and you tour and and you never make any money ever.
Right.
And at that point, I was really getting tired of coming off the road and my lights being turned off and the toilet's still broken and my girlfriend was crying and And so I started playing with this blues band, and so this created like a new social relations to the means of production for me. I wasn't making big money, but I was actually making manageable income where I could like keep my lights turned on and pay my rent at a little apartment. And for me, it was just like almost like being middle class, sort of. Not really, but for me, for the first time, it was the least precarious I had ever lived. And that actually facilitated me starting to do projects like the Shame Idols, and the Shame Idols morphed into the Lolas and that sort of thing. I was able to do that, and those bands traveled. The Shame Idols toured and stuff like that. We would go out for a couple of weeks and stuff like that. But I had a solid gig when I'd get back. I was in this blues band that worked, and that was creative too. That was a lot of fun. It wasn't like being in like just a covers band. We were doing I had to like think on my feet and invent all the time. And
it wasn't just funny hats and Chicago songs.
No, not at all. In fact, that particular the band I'm talking about was a band called Topper Price and the Upsetters, and we looked very askance at that sort of thing.
Right.
We were pretty serious about playing the blues and it being like a living medium to work in. So.
But the blues bands we get in Indiana, I mean, they're all like middle-aged guys who wear funny hats because they're going bald.
Right.
And they all play Sweet Home Chicago like twice during their set.
Yeah.
And you're just like going, oh, this again.
Right,
and oddly enough, Indianapolis has one of the oldest blues bars in the country.
Okay.
Yeah, the Slippery Noodle, which has been there for like over 100 years.
Yeah. In Minneapolis?
Indianapolis.
Well, Indianapolis. Yeah. I mean, Indiana, like some pretty serious, notable. Like Jimmy Reed was coming out of Gary, wasn't he? Like when he was, cutting for VJ and stuff. Yeah. I mean,
Wes Montgomery's from Indianapolis.
Oh, dig. Okay, yeah. I mean that part of the country. Yeah, you can't overstate the importance of that part of the country for like blues and stuff. So I'm not surprised to hear that.
Well, we're 3 hours from Chicago, so a lot of the people who play Chicago will go, hey, we can add another show in Indianapolis for nothing because it's only 3 hours.
Right.
We got a fairly good.
That's awesome. I love that kind of music. I listen to it all the time. I don't try to play it anymore because of the blues hammer phenomenon. Like that bands like that have like destroyed the market for that in Birmingham, probably everywhere. But I mean, when I was playing with Topper, like that was like our job. Like my job was all, I mean, I would do like session work and do studio work and stuff like that. But my real job, my day job, it wasn't in the daytime, but my real job was I played in a blues band. And I made a okay living doing that, and then it started to become this hobbyist thing, for professional types and retired people and software developers to get their white boy blues.
Yeah, we get a lot of that
hobby thing on, and yeah. And so thanks a lot, blues hammer type bands.
So you give guitar lessons now too, right?
That's what my day job is. Literally, my day job is now. Yeah, I teach guitar, bass, drums, and ukulele 7 days a
Really?
week. Yeah, and get ready to start teaching mandolin.
You know, George Harrison kept a bunch of ukuleles in the trunk of his car, right?
George Harrison, Beatle George.
Yeah.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah, he used to keep a bunch of in his car because he said you never knew when you'd need them. And what he'd do, he'd go to Tom Petty's house and go, hold on a second, let me go grab a couple
okay.
of
Right.
Yeah, and that's
in
why.
In case you need to have a hoot.
Yeah, he
right?
could keep a bunch of them in his trunk. I thought that was very cool.
Yeah. I got into that like I was teaching guitar, and a friend of mine said, "Can you teach my daughter how to play ukulele?" I said, "No, I don't play the ukulele." He said, "If I buy you a ukulele, will you learn how to play it and teach my daughter how to play ukulele?" I said, "That sounds like a work opportunity." So. And if you play guitar, it's not.
I was going to say there shouldn't be too much difference, right?
It's the same type of beast, really. Yeah. You make the same shapes on it. You're minus 2 strings, and then the middle cousin of those would be which nobody. I had one student that wanted to play. He had a beautiful Gibson tenor guitar, and I learned how to like I didn't tenor guitar. It's a 4-string guitar. So we learned how to. I taught him, but he and I learned how to play Chicago tune tenor guitar. So same kind of deal. You make the same kind of shapes.
Well, it's funny when my parents got divorced, my mom started dating somebody who had a tenor guitar.
Oh man!
Strings. And I didn't get to meet him right away. She kept us apart for the first month or so.
Okay.
But anyway, so I'm asleep one night and I hear Jim Croce down in the living room, and I'm like, I wonder what that is. So I sneak down, and my stepdad to be with the tenor guitar is down on one knee, and he's going, if I could put time in a oh shit.
Dude.
And he just kept doing it over. He'd play a couple bars, then he'd fuck it up and go,
oh
god damn it, shit. And that's how I met him, just listening to him cuss at his tenor guitar.
Let me ask you. Okay, nerdy music stuff. Talking about tenor guitar.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with a tenor guitar player? He was a jazz bow, a guy called Tiny Grimes.
I know the name, but I don't.
Man, all right. Let's talk about Tiny Grimes for a second. All right. I did not know about this. Is a strange thing, and nobody ever talks about it. I don't know why. I had my phone playing in my vehicle. I was going through a drive-through at a fast food place, and I had downloaded a Charlie Parker album.
No.
Anyway, I downloaded. I saw somebody was sharing this album, Charlie Parker Ornithology. I was like, oh yeah, sure, yeah, I'd like to have that. Charlie Parker, giant of jazz. So anyway, it queued up on my phone. It started playing, and it wasn't what I thought. It was a studio album.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Charlie Parker, and it was he did this album, and it was a jump blues album. It was Charlie Parker. It was a jump blues album. It was beautifully recorded. It had a male vocal. There was a male vocalist on a bunch of this stuff, and a very overt electric guitar. And I was like, man, if I didn't know better, that sounds like Charlie fucking Christian playing electric guitar. And I looked it up. I looked the album up. When they ended the record ban in the 40s, or it might have been shortly after World War II, but whenever they ended the infamous record ban or whatever, they ended the record ban. These guys rushed into the studio and recorded this album that just presages rock and roll in such a huge way, and it's Charlie Parker. And this is why I'm just flummoxed that nobody ever talks about this.
Well, he did a lot of session work because he was always broke and he always needed drugs.
Yeah,
so
right.
If you needed someone and Charlie Parker was in the neighborhood, he'd come in and do it.
I mean, I assume that was the what was going on with this. But this is a Charlie Parker album. It's called Ornithology, and they're doing blues tunes, and the guy is singing, and Charlie Parker's playing his ass off, and then there's an electric guitar. It's Charlie Parker and electric guitar, and I looked it up, and it was Tiny Grimes, this guy Tiny Grimes, and he's playing a Gibson electric tenor guitar.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever even seen one.
Yeah. Well, they didn't catch on.
Except with my stepdad.
Right. The story goes Chuck Berry, when he first started out, he tried to do an act where he basically did the same thing that we know him as doing, but he was playing an electric tenor guitar. It just wasn't cool. It just, the tenor guitar just didn't catch on.
Chuck needs 6 strings.
Right. He needs 6 strings. But Tiny Grimes, man, not to be underestimated, like on an electric tenor guitar. I mean, it didn't sound like a 4-string guitar. It sounded like he was like, he was just all over the place on this thing.
Yeah,
anyway,
I'll look that one up. But
yeah.
chances are good. I may have already downloaded it and don't. I have a waiting list of stuff to listen to that's about 2 years long. So
right. Oh, dude,
literally, there's so much to listen to now.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's good new stuff too, and I hear some of it.
Yeah.
But there's no way I can catch up with that and catch up with the stuff that I've missed 50 years ago. There's just not enough time in the day.
Did you see me where I was talking about this English act called Broadcast?
Yes, I've never heard them, but
man. They apparently they put out a lot of stuff, and I just discovered this in the last couple of days. I'm listening to their first album from 2000. I'm just so mad that I never heard of these guys. I've just been driving around just like shaking my head like in the movie Ed Wood when he's watching his own movie and he's like, I'm just driving around like trying to not wreck listening to this album. It's like, it's so good.
But I love it when I discover something like that. Do you remember a band called Denim?
No.
See, now I just found this like last year or a year and a half ago.
Okay.
I just stumbled across it by accident.
Yeah.
One of the greatest records I've ever heard, and yet it just kind of came out.
When did it come out?
There,
like circa
early 2000s, I believe.
Oh, really?
But the guy who is Denim was also the guy who was Felt. Remember Felt?
No.
They were like on 4AD back in the 80s.
Okay.
Sort of like, a shoegazer type of thing.
Right.
This Denim stuff sounds nothing like it. It sounds like 70s bubblegum pop.
Oh my God.
With really weird lyrics.
And
there's like one song about how there's too many Osmonds.
Oh, dude. Okay, I gotta get in on this.
Yeah, you do. It's really. I think it would be right up your alley.
Yeah.
But again, that album had been out for like 20 plus years. I didn't know about it, and then poof, there it was. And I love that.
Like early 2000s, is it because war, or I don't know? We hadn't stopped being at war since that time.
Yeah. Well, when I was a kid, pre-internet. Like I had a couple of books, like the Rock and Roll Encyclopedia or whatever. I'd look through that. I'd see a band. I go, hey, they sound interesting.
Right.
And then I'd be lucky if I could find the album, because more than likely it'd be out of print.
Right.
And then if I could find it, it'd probably be expensive.
It'd be a gem import.
Yeah, so sometimes it would take you like literally years to hear a band that you're curious about.
Right.
Now, man, I mean, people bitch about the internet all the time.
It's
man,
awesome.
I can go right on there and go, hey, I wonder what they sound like.
If you want to discover
I
music. I never knew anybody, and it's like, I'm a music nerd. I've known some music nerds in my time, and nobody ever said, hey, you need to check out da-da-da-da. If I would have heard that in 2000, I would have been doing backflips about broadcast. But it's just like YouTube Music goes like, hey, we noticed you've been listening to a lot of Always and Stereolab. You should probably check out Broadcast. And I was like, okay, it's just like, oh my God. It's just unbelievable.
I was going to ask you earlier when we were talking about the guitar lessons, and then we'll move on. So, are a lot of kids taking guitar lessons these days?
Yes, and that's been really interesting. That really paints my world going across the week now.
Right.
Yeah, I teach a lot of kids. I have a lot of adult students. Adult students really tend to do great. Kid students, it's just this gamut. It's like it's a really broad experience teaching kids.
Well, word on the street is rock and roll is dead, and yet I still think that there's got to be kids like me, because when I was, he's known me since second grade, and he'll tell you that I'm probably the biggest music nerd he's ever met.
Sure.
And I always was just digging and digging and digging and digging, And so even when I was young, I wasn't just listening to this. I was like going back and listening to this. And, my dad had a Buddy Holly album. I'd go in there and sneak it out and listen to it. I mean, I was always interested in what came before. Always.
Right.
And I can't help but think there's got to be kids out there like that now, right? I mean,
the thing that's different, the one thing that's where my experience is just going to be irretrievably different from the experience that 95% of kids that I'm teaching guitar, and I I don't really like qualify this or put I don't put a like it's a good or bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just different. Like their material conditions are different than my material conditions were in 1979 when I took up the guitar.
Uh-huh.
Kids don't are it's not really an idea to them like right now. It's may change later. Kids are not thinking like I'm going to learn how to play guitar and I'm going to start a rock and roll band
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to have our own little rock revolution. That was exactly what I was trying to do when I was 13 years old in 1979. I was like reading about it, and like I bought this little fan book about Blondie, and it turned out it was written by Lester Bangs.
Uh-huh.
And I'm sure he needed like money to get dope or whatever,
Sure.
and he just banged this thing out. But it's Lester Bangs, and there was like a chapter in there about, okay, kid, you like Blondie, we need to explain to you what punk rock is.
Right.
Rock and roll is the ultimate populist art form because anyone can do it, and you need to get a guitar and don't become technical. Just learn 3 chords and start playing the guitar now.
Right.
It's your duty as a human being to start a band. I was like, well, okay, that's what I'm gonna do, and I don't think there's anything like that exactly for kids. I have been trying to explain to some kids that it's a myth. Kids will come in and tell me it's like, well, people are making a lot of money off of their YouTube accounts, and like I don't want to be like a jerk, like dad rock guy.
Sure.
But like I am going, okay, do you know anybody that's making a lot of money off of their YouTube account? And it's like, oh, well, no, not really. It's like, yeah, that's because there's not. I mean, yeah, there are, but like you and nobody is gonna like set up a YouTube account and do something cute on it and like have 80 million hits and
Right.
you're gonna make tons of money. But that's more what kids. That's kind of the mythos. The mythos for me was the Ramones and the Velvet Underground and the Stooges and all of that. For like kids now, they'll see where somebody like who's the guy that's oh man, I'm so old.
Oh, that's okay. I forget shit too. So.
Who's the guy that's doing the Old Town Road? And which more power to him, by the way. You know what I'm talking about? It's this young man, young African American, and he's taking a Billy Ray Cyrus song.
I know who you're talking about, but I can't
He's
think
turned
of his
into
name.
a huge hit. He's like this underclass kid. He's real young. He looks like he's like 20.
Right.
And he's taking a sample of this, and then he put his auto-tuned like vocal on it. It's like this next thing that's happening after like hip hop.
Right. Oh, hip hop is leaking into mainstream country.
Yeah.
And I don't think mainstream country is very happy about it.
Oh yeah, because he ended up like, I mean, I got the impression like he just ended up, what he did was so zeitgeist that he just boom went to the top of the country chart, and then the people in charge of the country chart said, wait a minute, man, he can't be there.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what about like Rascal Flatts and all this? Like garbage. It's like, well, yeah, that's different. Well, why is it different? It's like, well, yeah,
Because we did it.
Yeah,
that guy didn't have our permission.
Yeah, But yeah, so that's the thing. And there's, okay, all right, Imagine Dragons. Like, and if I had a different relations to the means of production,
Right.
I might feel differently about Imagine Dragons. But I'm going to say this. Kids are coming, Imagine Dragons, like, paints my world across the week, because I get these kids coming to me and like Imagine Dragons is songs that they can actually learn how to play on guitar.
Right.
So that's ended up like, so I'm in favor of Imagine Dragons because of that, because this is the first proper songs that kids are learning on guitar, and they're pop songs. I'm sort of impressed with the kind of dark edge on, and this stuff is totally marketed to kids. It's bubblegum.
I've never heard a note, but everybody I know hates them.
Yes, and there's got to be something to that too.
Right.
The lyrics tend to point towards like, man, it's like an impossible, like this is bubblegum. It's totally marketed for kids. Kids, I'll go like now. It's like now I like it's on my radar. I'll get a new student, and he'll be like 10, and I'll be like, well, man, you want to learn? You got a few chords going. You want to learn a song? And they'll go, I don't know any songs. like that's the answer I get. I don't know any songs, I don't know any artists, and I'll be like, do you want to learn some Imagine Dragons? And they're like, they light up.
Really?
Right. So you can imagine. I'm like, my take in my profession now, which is a guitar teacher and also an old punk with an idea of this kind of idea of like, yeah, man, boys and girls need to get guitars and learn how to play music so they can get out in the world and cause trouble.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, Imagine Dragons is playing a role in this now in my world. And like the Imagine Dragons music, like these are kids that are like 9, 10, 11 years old and stuff. The lyrical content is like dark. It's not like without redemption, but basically the lyrical content is like, man, everything is stacked up against you, kid. It's a tough world, but you're gonna get out there and kick ass and rule. And this song is a pep rally to get you primed to get up and get out there and deal with all of this bullshit with all clean lyrics.
And that's what punk rock was to us when I was young.
Yeah. People hearing this may be going like, oh my God, Tim Boykin likes Imagine Dragons, but if you put it in this context, it's like, I'm like, I'm not down on it. If I was just like a gigging musician, I'd be like, man, that's bullshit, that's not cool, that's not rock and roll or whatever. But like in my daily world out there schlepping and like working and stuff and trying to help these kids become like young musicians, like I'm 100% in favor of it.
And I'm happy whenever any kid is interested in virtually any kind of music, because that means he's not interested in something stupid, maybe otherwise. And I'm also extremely cool with music for kids. Like, I don't hate Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift was another one I was gonna say. She's like the Jimi Hendrix for young girls.
Right. And the thing is, and I always say, look, 13-year-old kids need stuff to listen to too.
Yeah.
I didn't start with Captain Beefheart.
Right.
I mean, the Osmonds was like my first big, other than the Beatles. The Osmonds, and I had young parents, so
I was the target audience of the Bay City Rollers.
Yeah.
Oh,
I remember the night they were on Howard Cosell. The night they were on the Howard Cosell show.
Right.
I was tuned right in there. I love that stuff, and I listen to it now. It's not bad music. I like that. I like the catchy 3-minute. Get in there, get out, give me a hot chorus and.
Yeah. I so do not want to be dragging kids back and go, now you need to be learning Creedence Clearwater Revival, son.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
Good luck trying to get some kid to listen to music from Big Pink. It just ain't going to happen.
And a bunch, I know there's a bunch of teachers out there that are doing that, and that's okay, because I'm going to get their students.
Yeah. Let's go to the cool teacher over there. He'll teach us what we want.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, okay. Let's just start from the beginning here.
Okay.
How did you end up in Birmingham?
I was living in North Carolina. Really, Birmingham's really important in the story of me being a musician. I had taken up the cause of rock and roll and learning how to play the guitar and be a musician in Fayetteville, North Carolina. My dad was a soldier, and we had moved around the whole time I was growing up. We lived in the southeast, and we lived out on the West Coast a lot. We lived in Los Angeles, we lived in Fresno, we lived in Monterey, Fort Ord's up there, and just, in the 60s and 70s. We lived on Fort Bragg like 5 different times or something. In Georgia, Anyway, we were living in North Carolina. One of the times that we were stationed in North Carolina, that was when I ended up basically getting to be like 12 and 13. And my mom had a guitar, and I started fooling around with it. And that was during the time when the Sex Pistols did their U.S. tour, and all of this stuff. And I was aware. I was a kid. I was just grade school kid really when that was happening, but I was paying attention to it.
What year were you born?
I was born in '66.
Yeah, I was born in '61. So.
Okay. Yeah. So I was aware of that stuff, and then you started hearing about like stuff like Elvis Costello. Context-wise, in a world dominated by England Dan and John Ford Coley, like Elvis Costello was like some really insurrectionary stuff that was happening. Anyway, so I got really into all of that stuff, but we were living in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and there was no scene, there was no music scene, there was nothing for me to like bust into and take part in. Anyway, my dad got out of the Army, and we moved to Birmingham, which was where my mom was from. She had family connections down here, and that was actually ended up being really favorable for me because I was like a young musician wanting to get in bands and stuff. And we moved to Birmingham, and at the time there was like it was perfect. It was perfect conditions for me to bust into the band scene and play punk rock and do what I wanted to do. There was a great music scene, and so we moved here in 1982. Trouser Press did an article actually before we moved to it was foreshadowing. My brother was 3 years older than me, so when I had started high school, when I was in 10th grade, my brother was like had already graduated and he was going to college at the University of Alabama. So we were already kind of split up, and my brother was down here and my dad was fixing to get out of the army. But like when I was still living in North Carolina, my brother was going to, it was like, you were going to move to Birmingham. And I was not happy because I had like my friends. And I need to save this story up, but I'm kind of putting that together. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Trouser Press actually did a feature article about the music scene in Birmingham. Really? It was called Birmingham, Alabama. You think things are tough in your town. But we were living in Fayetteville. North Carolina, and there was really nothing happening there, like unless you wanted to just go play Leonard Skinner covers for GIs, but it covered like there were like these new wave and punk bands and stuff in Birmingham, and it was like, oh, that's where I'm getting ready to move, and like the people. She worked at the punk club. There was like really one proper like punk rock club in Birmingham. It was the Cavern down on Morris Avenue, and it was like this dark place. I actually managed to play one gig there, my first gig in a club when I was real young, right before it turned into the Cavern. It was the Frontier Club, and we lied and we told them that we were a blues band. We had a little 3-piece band, and we did like Stooges covers, and we did Link Ray and. Yeah, okay, I need to save this. I need to save all this for. Yes, yeah, it has to do with the Birmingham thing. I'm gonna rewind and read.
What's funny, because I got in a fight with that guy once. What is his name?
Oh, sure, that name's real familiar. Was he like the...
Back when he had the magazine, back in the 70s.
Yeah. They were real snooty.
Yeah, well, he wrote a review of Get Happy, which I did not like, because he said it was like, he thought it was Elvis's worst record and this and that. And
oh, sure.
And then he gave this glowing review of London Calling, where he called it the greatest album ever. And blah,
oh,
blah,
yeah,
blah.
the only band that matters.
I've never been a big fan of London Calling. I like about a third of it.
Right.
But Get Happy was like my favorite Elvis album.
Okay.
So I just got like really shitty, and I typed out this letter, and I says, okay, look, you've been wrong before. And then I went back and showed him his Buzzcocks review, where he said that they had no hooks.
Oh, ha!
And then I showed him his Elvis Costello review that he said Elvis wasn't a real person. It was Nick Lowe with a fake name.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Was he just being smart ass?
No, he was wrong. And I said, look, you've been wrong here, you've been wrong here, you've been wrong here, and you're wrong now.
Wrong
I said, Get Happy is a much better record than London Calling, blah, 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 blah.
Sure.
He printed the letter, but he cut out the whole section where I pointed out the times where he was wrong. Yeah.
Wow. Trouser Press was real snooty.
I loved it anyway, though, because before the internet, I needed to know.
You had to have it, man. Yeah. You had to have it. Yeah. I mean, first time I heard Black Flag was in Trouser Press. First time I heard Minor Threat was in Trouser Press. Yeah. First time I heard of the Replacements was in 1981 in Trouser Press.
Well, I'm going to go back a little earlier. I mean, we're talking like 77, 78.
Sure.
That was where I record shopped, because there was nowhere to buy punk rock records in Indianapolis. So you had to go to the back of Trouser Press and look at the ads. And I got like the first Devo single, which came in this like really cool gatefold sleeve and stuff.
Press.
And they would write you notes. They would like go, thank you for ordering our record. We could really use this $2. Or whatever.
Yeah.
I had letters from like Hugo Burnham from the Gang of Four thanking me for like setting off for one of their records. I had all this shit in boxes, and it's all gone now. But back then, if you wanted anything, where I was, you had to send away for it. There was no way.
Sure.
New Vibrator single came out. They didn't have it down at Peaches.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I was born a little later, so like when we were still living in Fayetteville. in like when I was first getting into stuff, there was a record bar at Cross Street Mall in Fayetteville, and like it was kind of like I don't know who the owners were, but I was a kid, but I kind of figured out like these people are all gay and they have really good taste in music.
Right.
You know what I mean? They weren't so much into like the more aggro punk stuff, but the record store was full of it, and that was where I bought Blank Generation, and that was where I bought the first Ramones album and all that kind of stuff. So I was lucky in that, you know, I was able to walk into a store but yeah, I get that.
Well, my Ramones story is kind of weird. I have an uncle. Did you ever heard of a band from Indiana called MX80? They were on Ralph Records.
Yeah.
My uncle was their drummer until he decided he wanted to be an artist and he was going to move to New York. So about 1975 or so, he goes out to look for an apartment out there.
Yeah.
He ends up buying a loft that takes up an entire city block for like $400 a month. And he ended up cutting it into apartments.
Man, I'm going to go do that now.
Oh man, it was.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was so good he bought two. So so he comes back and he goes, hey, look. And now I didn't have an older brother. I had a cool uncle, and he was the one that gave me a copy of Having a Rave Up with the Yardbirds when I was like 7.
Yeah,
and stuff like that.
He
was Lothar and the Hand People and Fever Tree and all this like Country Joe and the Fish.
Yeah,
this weird shit that I should not have been listening to, but he just gave it to me. So he comes back from New York and he goes, hey dude, I heard this band, and you're gonna love them. So if you ever just see an album by the Ramones, just go ahead and buy it.
Just be sure,
Just go ahead and buy it. And this was like a good year and a half before the first album came out. So we were reading Rock Scene at the time. Do you remember Rock Scene magazine?
Yes,
It's mostly just all pictures.
Right.
And every month they'd have an article about the Ramones. One of them where they were shopping for a PA system. And I remember like Joey was like inside one of the cabinets going, hey, we could live in here while we're touring. And it was just like, there was like going to the grocery store with the Talking Heads was one of them.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing all these pictures. We still have no clue what they sound like. But we're like going, man, these guys just don't look like Uriah Heep. I don't know.
Right.
I mean, can they rock?
Something's up.
Whatever.
Yeah.
So right after my birthday, I think it was, I had some money, and my mom was going to get her hair done. She goes, "You want to go with me?" And there's a record store next to where she could get her hair done. I was like, "Yeah, I'll go because I got this $5 bill. I'm going to spend it on something." So I go in there, and there's that Ramones album. And I'm like going, "Hey, there's that band my uncle was telling me about." And this store that we bought it from, it was $4.81, which made an even $5 with tax.
Yeah.
So I was like, here's my $5. I'm going to take this home. So I took it home and I put it on. The first song comes on and I'm going, all right, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
The second song comes on and I'm like, well, that's the same as the first song.
It's just like the first song.
And then the next one comes on, and I was convinced I got a defective copy. I thought maybe I accidentally pressed the same song on each groove.
I've heard similar accounts.
And then my ears were catching the lyrics, and I realized they're different. And I'm like going, okay, maybe that's not the same song. So I take it and I put it back at the beginning. I listen to it again, and now it's starting to kind of form, you know?
Yeah.
After I listen to it like three or four times.
They have a minimalist agenda.
After I listen to it like 3 or 4 times, I'm jumping up and down on my bed.
Yeah,
like this,
yeah.
And like within the next week, I took a bunch of albums like Bob Seger and Emerson, Lake and Palmer and all this stuff. And I was like, I'm never listening to these again. You know? I did eventually, of course, go back because you know you go back for nostalgia occasionally. Stuff. Yeah. I mean, I can still enjoy some Demons and Wizards sometimes.
Right.
But and then from there, it just kind of snowballed, you know. There wasn't a whole lot available after the Ramones. I think even Leave Home came out before there was really anything much else that you could buy. Wow. All the Stooges records were out of print. You couldn't buy those. The MC5 albums, they were out of print. You couldn't, you know, these were things, of course, I'd read about, and you couldn't find. And then I went to New York City to visit my uncle in 1976. And do you remember when Saturday Night Live used to be only on 3 weeks out of the month, and then the 4th week they would have like a news magazine, sort of like a 60-minute
now that you
sort
mention
of thing.
it,
But they did that for a few years. Well, anyway, so it just so happens that while I was there, they had this news magazine about this new music coming out of England. The Damned were on it, Dr. Feelgood, the Sex Pistols, and they assumed that we couldn't understand them, so they had the lyrics with the Follow the Bouncing Ball. And we're watching this, we're kind of enjoying the music, but the lyrics are making us crack up. So the next day we go record shopping, and I pick up Wayne County and Talking Heads, Love Goes to Building on Fire.
Wayne County, speaking of Trouser Press, Marjorie, what was her column?
It was Jane County. It was like an advice column. I learned a lot.
Yeah, this was Wayne before she was
Right,
Jane.
right.
And so anyway,
By the time I came along, it was Doc Rock, and it was the guitar player from the Patti Smith group.
right.
And he was the advice call. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean
So
to-
yeah, so we're going, and then I find God Save the Queen, or not? Yes,
Yeah.
God Save the Queen.
Yeah.
And I'm like going, oh, this is what I've been waiting for.
Yeah, yeah,
because this
yeah.
is the name I keep seeing everywhere.
Right.
So then our last stop of the day was at Bleecker Bob's. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Now that guy who owned the place had to be one of the biggest assholes who ever walked the earth.
Yeah,
we
yeah.
walked in there and he was yelling at an employee to the point where I thought the employee was going to start crying. And I'm only like 14 or 15. And I'm like, first time in the big city. I'm like, do people really live like this? Well, he had a copy of Anarchy in the UK on EMI, the one that only about 1,000 copies leaked out.
Yeah.
Had it on the wall for $5. Now $5, that was the same cost as an album. So
Yeah.
I'm looking at it like going, $5 for a 45.
Yeah.
Shit, I don't know. My uncle goes, I'll get it for you. Don't worry. So we get it because we knew he wasn't
Such a
going to
cool
play it for
uncle.
us. He wasn't going to play it for us. We knew. So we go home. We didn't have a chance to listen to it. I went to bed, and I got up the next morning. My uncle was sitting on this stool with a cup of coffee and a pair of headphones. He's just
Yeah.
doing this, and he looks up and he goes, "You're gonna shit your pants over this stuff." And he was right. I was just and like, and I came home. And my friend was supposed to have gotten me tickets for Aerosmith, which at this point I didn't really care that much about. I still like Aerosmith, but at the time I was starting to be a little snobby.
Right.
And they announced an Elvis Costello show at a really small theater downtown with Rockpile and Mink DeVille opening up for $1.95.
Oh man.
And that was like my first punk rock show.
Yeah.
And we went to that, and Elvis and the Attractions. I don't know if you ever saw them in the early days.
I never got to see the Attractions.
They were as tight gets. It was like you remember you were there.
Yeah.
It was like 4 people operating on one central brain.
Yeah.
It was like, I mean, you'd hear them doing stuff, and this is especially true on Get Happy. You can hear Bruce Thomas, these bass lines that are coming out of nowhere, and somehow or another the drummer is right in the pocket with them, and Steve Naive is doing just exactly what needs to be done on the keyboards without overdoing it and making it sound stupid. It was really amazing.
Yeah.
And the second time I saw Rockpile, I saw Nick Lowe throw up on himself.
Oh, really?
Backstage, and then he came out and played with vomit all over him.
They were doing a bunch of blow, weren't they? I kind of had, when I go back and listen to that stuff, I was like, man, they're great, man, but these guys were just like burning their candle at both ends.
Well,
you can kind of hear it in the. It's like, man, that's a good vocal take, but that was probably hard to get that as much drinking dope as those guys were doing.
I've tried to look up why Rockpile broke up, and you cannot find an answer. To this day, nobody's talking. Yeah, Nick Lowe basically, he sort of hinted that Dave Edmunds is difficult to get along with.
Yeah.
Which I've seen interviews with him where that kind of comes out.
Yeah.
But if you try to find a specific reason why Rockpile broke up, you can't.
I got to hang out with and jam with Billy Bremner. He was in town, and this is a Topper Price and Upsetter story. Topper, who was a great musician and kind of a legendary gonzo guy. Anyway, Billy Bremner turned up in town. He was making his way across the country. I think maybe I'm not sure. He didn't like to fly or something. He was doing some kind of like tax angle. He was over here. He was doing something to try to like not have to pay out a bunch of money or something. And anyway, so he turns up in Birmingham, and him and Topper just became fast friends because they like to drink a lot. So they just pitched a bitch for a couple of weeks while Billy was in town. And so I met Billy a couple of times. He was a very charming fellow. He was like this sort of W.C. Fields character. He was having a cocktail and you had a red nose and just like, oh, you having a bevy? Would you like a beverage? Yeah. And anyway, we ended up playing a gig, and Billy was in tow over in Tuscaloosa. We played at this place called the Old Train Station. And it was Topper Price and Upsetters playing, and Billy was along, and he wasn't there. He wasn't there to work, but he had a guitar and he had a little 15-watt solid state Marshall combo, and he did get up and play 2 songs with us, and he was just amazing. We had a pretty good little band, but when Billy got up and played with us, our band went. We became like this machine. Like he got up and did. I don't remember. He did 2 songs. I don't remember exactly what they were. One of them was like a little Richard tune. He was singing and playing guitar, and then when he left, then we sucked again. He went back to the bar and was like, oh man, please come back, Billy. We sound so good when you're up here playing with us. He's just the stuff, man. Anyway, that's my Billy Bremner.
All right. Okay. So you've made it to Birmingham, and you say there's an actual scene here?
There was a real scene here, and Marjorie pointed out like that right before moving here, Trouser Press actually did a feature article about the music scene, the fertile music scene in Birmingham, Alabama. There were bands going, like there was Jim Bob and the Leisure Suits. They were a new wave band. They were kind of a party band.
Right. Skinny Ties.
It was, it's sort of associated with that. They were a little weirder than that, and they were also had really legit punk roots. They were traveling up to New York and playing at CBs and playing at clubs and stuff, like really when the stuff was still going on.
Right.
Like, the story about one of the guys in the Dead Boys got like gored in a knife fight. Do you remember that story?
I was at the benefit concert for his health.
Okay.
His health bill.
Right,
yes.
and Belushi was there and all that.
He played drums with the Dead Boys.
Yes, and I
that
remember
was the night I was there.
Okay.
I have pictures.
You were there, and the guys from Jim Bob and the Leisure Suits were there too.
Uh-huh.
So like they were really like they didn't just know what was going on. They were present when all of that kind of stuff was happening. Matt Kimbrell, the late Matt Kimbrell, like he did a great like imitation of like just a cookie cutter like new wave, no wave type band that was ubiquitous and around New York at the time. He's like, well, you got to get up on the mic and go, I'm so bored. He would do that, you know what I mean? So he was like he knew what was going on. So they had like been there and done that, and they were like a working, gigging band. There was a club scene, and back then you could sort of get away with like throwing in a few covers and then playing your own stuff. Mm-hmm. It was that way for a long time. And so anyway, there was those bands. There was Jim Bob and the Leisure Suits. They were great. They were a really great band. And there was a band called the Colas, the much maligned Colas, but they were actually a really important part of the scene. And Tim and Natalie Pond were the owners of the Cavern Club. And I ended up, and Marjorie, my future wife, worked there. Yes. And I was a teenager. I was like really, really underage teenager. I was playing in there. I ended up. I had a little 3-piece band with my brother and a kid, and we were playing parties and like teen parties, and they hated us because we played only punk rock covers. We didn't have any originals yet, and stuff. But I was just like, this is not great for me. And I got in a band called the Ether Dogs, which an album is getting ready to come out.
Really?
Of Ether Dogs recordings. Yes, and the Ether Dogs played very sort of unrepentantly like 1977, just no kind of stuff. Hardcore was already a thing at this point, and I was sort of trying to like nudge us in that direction, but these guys were like in their 20s. I was like 15, 16, 17, and they were in their 20s, and we did very kind of Ramones, just really Cro-Magnon 70s like punk stuff. But we played at the Cavern, and we opened for the UK Subs there. We opened for the Circle Jerks. We started making little forays over into Atlanta. There was a place there, an all ages space called the Metroplex, and we opened for HR for the Bad Brains on one of his many exits from that band. And he had this awesome band, like all black band that played like a mixture of hardcore and reggae. Imagine that.
Yeah, did you ever see the Bad Brains proper?
I never saw the Bad Brains proper. Just like when we opened for HR, he was amazing. He had a really good band. But I never saw the Bad Brains.
I saw Bad Brains once.
Yeah.
And they took HR on a chair, much like this, okay?
Yeah.
Like this, and they took a couple rolls of duct tape, and they duct taped him to this chair, like wrapped it around his arms, wrapped around his chest, wrapped around his legs, and it took him 2 songs to break out of it. The first 2 songs, he's just like going, rah! He's like trying to break out of his tape. It was amazing. Now,
I like, that's a tough thing. Like, it's not always easy to do that. Like, I've found out things recently about Lou Reed, who is like a huge hero to me.
Me too.
Since-
My grandma bought me my first Lou Reed record.
That's a cool grandma.
Yeah, isn't that weird? Oh, she didn't know. I'm sure she didn't know.
This seems like something you might like.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I found out some stuff about him like recently about the kind of the circumstances surrounding the Berlin album. I always was like, what's the deal? There's something really sad about that album,
That's
but I
one
don't.
of my favorites, actually.
Okay, yeah. You know, and apparently he was like really abusive to. He was married to this gal, and
That's
I
what
was
I've heard.
for like 25 years. It's just like, well, he's just like this awesome gay rock and roll guy. It's like, well, yeah, okay, but he was married to this gal and he treated her horribly, and wrote fucked up songs about it and made this album. But anyway, like, yeah, you know, I don't know. I had to sort of compartmentalize Iggy having a 14-year-old girlfriend named Betsy and stuff like that.
Jimmy Page.
Right. Stuff like
Yeah.
that. I don't think Bowie was necessarily a saint all the time.
He was very nice to me.
Was he very nice to you? That's awesome.
I met him twice.
I like to hear that. But you know, I had to be able to. Okay, let's talk about Alex Chilton. Have you ever met that guy?
Yes.
Yeah.
He
A
was
really
not-
an amateur human being.
Yeah.
I mean,
Not
I
super friendly.
like yeah. I mean, he used to play in Birmingham a lot, and it got to where it was like a running joke. Really, it's like brilliant artist, like just really, really terrible person. You really
Right.
do not want to even go on an elevator ride with this guy. But really, though, it became like just sort of a fun thing after a while. It's like, oh man, let's go see Chilton. And he's like, he's gonna be great, and then like he's just like a piece of work. He actually, one of my rock and roll moments for my life, I was actually heckling him at the Nick, and like I'm not a big heckler, but it was Chilton, and he was up there doing his thing, and I was heckling him about something, and this was one of the most rock and roll moments of my life. He like looked, I was about this far away from him. And he like looks right at me, and he's on the mic, and he says to the PA and the Nick, he goes, "Why don't you get out of town, you fucking punk?" And it was like, and I was just like,
You did that really well, by the way.
Was that a good Chilton?
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's just like, yeah, Chilton, you know how he goes, yeah, why don't you get out of town, you fucking punk? And I was just like, man, you know, somebody could shoot me in the head tonight. Like, I just experienced up to this point the most rock and roll thing that's ever happened to me. I mean, this shithole dive, and Alex Chilton just called me a fucking punk in a really super snotty meet me at the bike racks at 3 o'clock voice.
Yeah.
So.
Well, a long time ago, I realized that I have to separate the art from the artist.
You know, you kind of have
Jerry Lee
to.
Lewis. I mean, how can you really like Jerry Lee Lewis?
Thank you, sir. Fist
knowing-
pump. You can't see that on there. We just had
Yeah.
a fist pump about Jerry
and
Lee
you know,
Lewis.
doing these podcasts so far, everyone I've met has been cool, and thank you for being cool.
Yeah.
But I know the day's coming where I'm going to meet someone who
Somebody's
I
gonna
really
be
like, and they're just it kind of like when Mark Maron interviewed Harry Dean Stanton. They're like.
I think I heard something about that.
Didn't,
Yeah.
It just didn't work.
Yeah.
Like he'd ask him a question, and Harry'd go like, "Yeah."
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, and then.
Or speaking of Lou Reed, right?
Yeah, and I
he just
think
loves interviews,
I
right?
think halfway through it, he goes, "Well, if you don't want to do this, I mean, that's okay." And he's like, "No, I'm fine." And it was just nothing there. But
I'm
yeah, so
contemplating
far,
an eternity of nothingness, so.
yeah. Well, I've got a gift for gab, and I can generally get people to talk. So I've had, like I say, everyone I've talked to so far have been fantastic.
Yeah,
And I'm so glad you've turned out to be cool.
Oh man, well, thanks, and you know that's certainly what I would want to do.
All right, so okay. There's a big scene in Birmingham.
Yeah.
Now, okay, it is Birmingham. I mean, in Indianapolis there was definitely a punk pushback. Okay, I got fucked with pretty much constantly.
Oh yeah, let's talk about being called faggot and chased and probably beaten up.
Yeah. Well, luckily I'm kind of funny, so I had a chance.
I had to be.
I mean,
yeah.
you had if you could make somebody laugh right before they hit you, generally at the very least they'll hit you like
Not as hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and that was kind of how I got through, because I assume you probably went to a lot of different schools, right?
Man, always the new kid.
Do you remember how much that sucks?
It sucked, and like when I was in Fayetteville before we moved here, like it was not going to be a good place for me to be a musician, but socially, because I could play guitar, like it was like a much more kind of down market, kind of working class and underclass environment for me to be. Brad Quinn, my old friend, he mentioned, like when I moved here, he had mentioned many years later, he said, I had never met anyone who put things in a context of class, and like moving around and living in different places, sometimes living on an army base, sometimes living in a civilian neighborhood. You couldn't help but see the differences. Like, these people have to live this way, and then these people have to live this way. Why is that? Well, we don't talk about that, Tim. This is the United States of America. If you want to talk about that shit, you can go live in another country. But anyway, you know what I'm saying? But like in Fayetteville, like like once word, I was a nerd kid, I was an outsider, I was a pariah. But when word got around in 9th grade, it was like Boykin plays guitar, and like so that functionally gave me like a role to play in my teenage social world.
Right. It gives you an in.
It gave me an in where I was like actually like a person of some import, and it earned me respect of my lumpen friends. And it was like, it worked like this. It was like, well, Kevin, he's a good fighter, and Steve, he can fix cars, and Boykin, he plays guitar.
Right.
So I was set up. So it like I was really unhappy about moving here in the middle of my 10th grade year. And I ended up like in Birmingham, Alabama, and man, it's beyond the scope of this interview to talk about like social relations in a place like Birmingham, Alabama, with its history and civil rights movement and a steel industry. Although the steel industry is going to play a role in the way the music scene was when I moved here. So we moved here, and like I'm going to like Berry High School in Hoover, Alabama, which is like this suburb and stuff. And like I could not play that. It was like I was like, well, I play guitar. It's like, well, what kind of guitar you got? It's like, well, it's just a guitar. It doesn't actually say anything on the head. It's like, well, man, I drive a Z28, so I guess you're just out of the picture. So that's what it was like at high school. Yeah. So coming back around to the like, well, Boykin, he's just some kind of punk rock faggot.
Yeah.
He doesn't play football or anything.
I went to 17 different schools in 14 years.
Oh, dig. Okay, man,
so
dude.
Both, that's I understand.
Man, you my brother from another mother.
Yeah, my last year, my mom kicked me out of the house after my junior year. So I had actually managed to go to the same school district 3 years in a row at this one point.
Yeah.
And senior year, I'm at a completely different school. And I was so pissed because I was living with my dad, who I did not get along with my dad back then, and he had a new wife who didn't like me at all.
Isolation, alienation.
I just fucking hated it. I just fucking hated it.
You were born to be a punk.
Yeah. And the thing was when I started listening to that stuff, all of my friends, except for him and another guy named Phil, who writes as John on the website that I do. They were the only two people that were remotely open to something new. The rest of my friends were like, fuck you. And they like literally abandoned me. They're just like, we don't want anything to do with you anymore.
Yeah, that was going to be a deal breaker for a lot of people. To go, I'm punk rock was like, I mean, it was a response to social isolation, social alienation. So it's not like you were like, it wasn't like I want attention. It was like, I'm stuck over here anyway.
Right.
So I'm going to own this. This is going to actually be my identity. I'm pushed out on the outside of polite friendly human society. I'm punk rock, and so people will go, if you do that, then you're done, sir. You will remain on the outside of society. But that's something a lot of people are not in the post Green Day world are never going to get.
Well, but the thing was, and it wasn't that complicated. I just liked the way it sounded.
Okay,
it was fast, it was loud, and it was catchy.
Right,
and that's a big thing for me. It's got to be catchy for me, you know.
Yeah.
And it all sounded great, and after I was going to say, and then anyway, that weekend or that week that I was in New York City.
Yeah.
We went record shopping again after that day,
right?
And I got the first Damned album, which had just come out. Remember, they were the first punk band to put out an
actual
whole album.
What a record! Yeah. And
then
Damned, one of my favorite bands ever.
And then I looked over and they had a Stooges section, and it was full of records, and I was like, those are out of print, and they were all imports. So I pick up Raw Power because that's the one I'm supposed to get, right?
Right.
My uncle says, no, you want Funhouse, and I was like, no, this is the one I keep hearing. He goes, no, you want Funhouse, and I'm like. He says, fuck it, just get both of them. And then
Yeah.
he ended up buying me all three.
Boy,
So-
like the Elektra records versus like those are very different records.
Funhouse is very close to my favorite record of all
I was
time.
gonna say I
Very
think
close.
Funhouse is probably one of the top 5 greatest rock albums ever made ever.
I've had the police called on me twice for playing music too loud.
Yeah.
Once was for Gene Vincent and once was for Funhouse. So I take that with a point of pride.
Oh man, Gene Vincent and like rockabilly and stuff too. Like that, it was my brother and I. That was a big thing that he and I. A lot of times we diverged about music. My brother really had a really broad taste in music.
Was
we
it
were
older brother?
3 years older. We were a lot alike. We were very different. But yeah, but one thing that he and I really bonded about was like a really intense love of rockabilly music.
Right.
Gene Vincent, Eddie Cochran. We were really kind of assholes about it. When the Stray Cats came out, we were like, no man, this is like poser. This is bullshit. Like I don't think that now. Actually, now I
Yeah,
go back.
I actually have a much less dim view of them now than I used.
Yeah, but like in like 1980, 81, it was like no way. Or whenever that stuff came out, I was like, no way, man. It took like I had to mature a little bit,
Sure.
to come to it's like, oh, that's fantastic.
But also, there's always that first step, because to a lot of kids, the Stray Cats was the first rockabilly they ever heard.
Sure.
And it got them into, other stuff.
Absolutely.
And like for me, I grew up in a family that hated country music. My mom made fun of it. My dad completely ignored it.
Wow.
I mean, it was like it was persona non grata in our house.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
But stuff like BR549, Jason and the Scorchers, Beat Farmer, stuff like that. People make fun of that as being like faux country or cowpunk or whatever.
Yeah.
But that was the stuff that made me go, maybe this country stuff isn't so bad. Maybe I should dig a little.
Yeah.
And and that's what I like about music is because sometimes one band can help you discover 10 others.
Sure.
And they're sort of like, or even authors. I remember reading a interview with Pete Shelley, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm reading this Philip K. Dick book," and I'm like,
Oh,
and
get
I'm
that,
like going,
yeah.
Philip K. Dick, what's that?
Right.
So I go to the bookstore, I get a couple of them,
Yeah.
and then poof, I've discovered this entire new world, and that's what I love about music, is because it's like a set of dominoes, and if you hit the right domino, then you're going to discover all these other dominoes, that come after. So bands
Marjorie
like
and I
Stray-
talk about that all the time. She's the same type of critter as we are,
Oh.
and she came up the same way. She was into like 70s. She was into like.
I mean, I was a 12-year-old girl, and my first album I bought with my own money was EOP's Tarkus. Did not go over good at slumber parties. I
No,
can
but
tell you that
that's still very cool for 12.
That's really cool for 12.
Yeah.
And then she was like, then she was like a glam kid in high school. She had like silver space boots, and she was like,
Yeah, my
And
Mom,
that was like
my
being a
mom-
punk at that
my mom
point.
Right.
yelled-
Yes.
My mom yelled at me one day. She said, "You are not getting your hair cut like Ariel Bender."
Yeah.
She had Ariel Bender hair.
I just saw him at the Hoople last month.
oh, no kidding.
Yeah, we went
How
to the
was
show in
that?
Chicago. It was great.
Was it great? Hell yeah.
It was really good.
That's cool. Oh yeah, I would.
I knew
mind
it would
seeing
be
that.
because Ian Hunter's still putting on good shows, and he's almost 80.
Well, man, he's been doing this for a minute. He knows how to do it, right?
Yeah, he's got experience.
Yeah.
So yeah, they were great. So anyway, first steps, blah blah blah. Okay, let's go back to
Right.
Birmingham.
I'm
now.
trying to put
Okay.
together a narrative.
I am trying to put. Okay, so the first, what was the first time that you were in a band that like lasted for a while, that maybe did some recording, that just was
Okay, well,
your first proper band?
okay, really, like, I mean, it was a false start, but still, we made recordings and we made a go of it for. It seemed like an epoch, but it was probably only about 2 years. But the Ether Dogs, I got to give a plug about the Ether Dogs because this album is about to
Right.
come out. And that was a proper band. These guys we weren't like real pro or anything, but these guys were in their 20s, and I was like a kid. My nickname was the Kid because I was like a teenager, and I mean I was really young, and they were in their 20s, so they seemed like really grown-ups. And we had a proper band, and we rehearsed and drank tons of beer and got super drunk, and then we'd go play gigs and stuff. And we were like this really misanthropic like punk band. Like that was kind of how we differentiated ourselves from everything else that was going on. We were
Right.
really for a couple of years, we were really the only proper, like, we were a punk rock band. We weren't like new wave. We were a punk rock band. Anyway, that band, I left that band like sometime around the time that I graduated from high school, 1984, and started playing with Carnival Season. Carnival Season may be what you're looking for as far as like a really functioning band, because that band, we did all the same stuff. You know, we rehearsed, we played gigs, and we started traveling. The Either Dogs didn't travel well, but Carnival Season, we started traveling around the Southeast, and we made recordings, and then we actually got like signed to a British label, What Goes On Records, and we put out we self-released an EP at first, and then we ended up putting out a 12-inch EP on What Goes On label, and then we did a full-length album that was produced by Tommy Keene.
And are these easily available? Can they be found?
All
can
that
you make
stuff.
Me a copy?
I can do you better than all that. I mean, if you can find the vinyl, I mean, it's around. It can, but it's out there. But
I don't want my street cred to suffer, but I don't have a turntable.
Well, yeah, no,
That's
don't
cut out for sure.
Hey, listen, let me tell you, I like. I'm such a dirtbag. I have a turntable, and I'm too lazy to get up and walk across the room and use it. I have all my old records, and I'm sitting there at the computer, and I go, and play albums that are right behind me, getting dusty. But you can get a really nice. It's a nice package. It's on the Arco label, dude. And I've got a box of them at home. I need to get you a copy before you head out. When are you leaving tonight?
Are we leaving tonight?
We haven't really made the plans.
Yeah,
yet.
we're
Okay,
I just right now.
I need there's a box sitting upstairs. I need to just give you a CD. It's a really nice package. It came out on the Arena Rock Recording Company label, Arco, and it's a really nice package. It's really everything you could possibly. It's all the stuff. It's the stuff. I mean, we didn't put out a ton of stuff, but there was like the. There was the self-released 7-inch EP. There was the 12-inch EP. There were demos. We actually did demos. Carnival Season did. We did demos for that were paid for by MCA. That was kind of that was the lights just came on. That was
automatic, or did somebody do that?
Me.
Oh,
I think the missus did that. MCA Records, we were going up and playing in Nashville a lot. We had some really good times in Nashville. In fact, Marjorie and I started hooking up in Nashville. It was party times in Nashville, and we used to play with this really great band called Shadow 15. I don't know if there's stuff out that you can get by them. They were a really cooking little punk band, good band. And but anyway, MCA they're hardcore. They really don't want to sign your band. They don't give a shit how good you are. They don't want to sign your band.
MCA was not a location label that a lot of people wanted to go to.
Yeah. But we were going up and we were playing in dive rock clubs in Nashville, and MCA they said, well, okay, we'll finance, we'll give you guys a little pittance to record demos. And we went to Terminal Studio in Jackson, Mississippi, and which is like really down market in music business terms, but it was the nearest like studio that had like ADAT machines, and so that was a big deal in the mid '80s. So we went over there, and we Tim Lee for the Windbreakers was hired to produce. And we slept on the floor in a closet in a storage closet like in his house, and recorded a bunch of stuff. That's on the Arco stuff. It's pretty exhaustive and really nice liners. There's like a little booklet.
Yeah, that's definitely something I want to hear.
Yeah, Robert, is it Pollard or Pollard? From
the guy
Guided
from
by Voices. Yeah.
I think it's Pollard.
He name checks us in there. He was like, oh, I'm totally
Really?
influenced by these guys. When I found their albums, I was like, I knew that this was what I wanted to do and all this kind of stuff.
He used to come to my record store and buy a lot of records.
Yeah. love his band. Just, when you go see him live, he's gonna drag you through the mud.
Right.
Like, it starts off, you're like, oh my, this is the best shit ever, and then they keep playing it, and then it's a struggle of wills. They're gonna keep playing until you fucking leave.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
they've got good songs.
They have fantastic songs.
But like Lou Reed and like Todd Rundgren, I love the stuff that I love, but I think that they're low batting average. You know?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like they put out so much stuff.
It's too much
there's
stuff.
no way that all of it's going to be good.
Right.
The good stuff I really love.
It's like songs like, man, this song is going to go on a killer mixtape, right?
Exactly.
That kind of stuff. Badass single, that kind of thing.
Yeah. But, like when the CDs first came out, albums used to be 30, 35 minutes, 40 minutes long. And that's great.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden somebody figured out, hey, I got 70 minutes I can fill. And I like Frank Black. I really do.
Sure.
But I don't have time to listen to a 70-minute CD.
Thank God those days are over.
They are
like
over.
when CDs became the medium, like, you'd sign with an indie label and you had to have like 25 fucking songs on your album. Thank God those days are over. And when I figured out that was the deal, the new Lola's album, I think it's like 27 minutes long.
It's short.
And I was like, yeah, that's how long a power pop album should be, 27 minutes
Get
long.
in, get out, get the job done.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
just only good stuff, no boring parts.
And Elvis Costello did it too. He started putting out these 65-minute records, and I'm like going, look, I'm only in my car for 20 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
So I only ever would get used to half of an album at that point.
There's no way an album can hold
Yeah.
your attention that long.
Yeah, and I had a friend of mine who was in a band, and he was talking about putting out this
Speaking of the
huge
Clash,
record.
Sandinista, that was the deal breaker. I was
Yeah,
done with them
I'm
after
out.
that.
I'm out.
Yeah.
So anyway, I told the guy, I said, look, here's what you do. Put the album on the CD, and then at the end of it, also includes bonus EP. Separate the songs by 30 seconds of silence, and then put the rest of the songs, and that way somebody can choose whether to listen to the album
Right.
or the EP.
There you go.
Give them a choice. And then nobody ever follows my advice.
That's a really good idea.
Because I just couldn't do it. I mean, I'm only in my car for a certain amount of time, and if your album doesn't fit within that certain amount of time, I'm never going to hear those last 3 songs. So.
I mean, that's just how it be.
Yeah. Okay, so how did Carnival season end? Badly?
Carnival season, well, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, I'm extremely alcoholic. I'm just going to speak for myself.
I come from a family of that.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I haven't had a drink of it. I'm not going to talk about 12-step stuff because I'm not in that world now. But I don't drink. I haven't had a drink of alcohol since August 10th, 1989. Because I'm extremely alcoholic. And in 1989, I was I think 23 years old, and I had wrecked my health at 23.
Really?
So yeah. That was very much what happened as far as my departure. I quit Carnival season. I was always I was sort of the Keith Moon of even though I wasn't the drummer, I was the Keith Moon of Carnival season. Carnival season played songs that were about what a mess I was. I was like, and there's pictures of me drinking heavily in the photos, in the Arco album, because if you took a picture of me back then, I was drinking heavily. So we traveled a lot during the whole time I was in that band. We did several forays up the East Coast and up into New York. We played at CBGB's and did all that fun stuff, and then we did always on a shoestring budget, sleeping on floors, total punk rock.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? And we did a shoestring budget jaunt around the country, and we went and a West Coast tour is just grueling because it takes forever to get from one proper city to the next. Everything's so far apart. And man, by the time we got to the Bay Area, I was a wreck. It had been fun up to that point, but I was really getting in real bad shape. And we finished out the tour, and we got back home, and then it's just a haze after that. I don't really know what all was going on after that, but I was just very non-functioning. Brad, who was handled business for the bands and stuff, he was capable of doing all kinds of really worthy things. So he was kind of looking at what his options were. It wasn't great working, with me or whatever. And he and I tended to kind of butt heads because I was rock and roll like scumbag, and he like there was sort of this push pull thing. Like I loved pop and stuff, but like my job in that band was to keep things kind of hard edged and chaotic. That was really the role I played, and that was conscious. Everybody that was out in the open like that. That was my job in the band. And Brad really wanted to pull it towards being really more like proper like pop, not just power pop, but like really pop. Maybe guitar pop, but really, really pop and stuff. So that just, that broke. Really, after I got sober, I was like, all right, I'm sober. I don't even know what the fuck being sober is supposed to be like. It kind of seems like being on acid. That was my only reference for being sober at that point. So I quit that band, and who knows what would have happened, but really, like things happened the way they needed to. And I ended up being in there were worthy players that I ended up being in a not very good band called Barking Tribe, who had a great record deal. We had a deal in the early 90s with Rykodisc, and we made one album called Serpent Go Home. It's not a very good record. It was beautifully recorded by Brian Paulson. We recorded it at Smart Studios in Madison, Wisconsin. Butch Vig set up mics on that.
Brian Paulson, huh?
He was a Minneapolis guy, I believe. He had done
because one of the guys I did a podcast with is also named Brian Paulson.
It's got to be. Is he a Minneapolis guy?
Indianapolis guy.
Indianapolis
He's
guy.
real big into keyboards.
Okay.
I doubt it's the same guy, but.
Okay, yeah.
Kind of
Paulson did a great job, and like I said, Butch Vig, pre-fame and success Butch Vig, this was in the early 90s, and everybody was wondering which indie band was going to rip the lid off of the indie industry because it was going to go boom, right? And
because the hair bands were ruling at that point.
Yeah. When Carnival season in the late 80s, to step back a little bit, like in the late 80s, we were kind of enjoying some of that stuff. We were nowhere near that at all. We were just really scruffy, and we had a lot more in common with like musically with like Sex Pistols, New York Dolls. If you could somehow combine that with the Byrds or something, that was kind of Carnival season. But we kind of sort of tongue in cheek, so well, that's kind of fun. But when we were in Hollywood in 1988, we were walking around and seeing them. We played at Raji's, which is this punk club. That was such a great club.
The Dream Syndicate recorded their live album there.
Oh no! Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were like that, we went to we saw Tex and the Horseheads like at some little club, and that was like kind of our world. Or we were seeing like the flyers of the hair bands, and we kind of had picked up. It's like these guys are like booking in like the whiskey, and they're like paying money to like play, and they're trying to sell tickets and stuff. It's like that was just alien to us. It was just like, no man, we're just trying to like come up with like $5 like to get a 6-pack of beer,
Even more alien when I lived in Hollywood from like 2001 to 2011.
Yeah.
Those guys still live there. They're in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and they still have
with the hair.
And you see them walk down the street, and you want to snicker, but you don't want to be mean.
Right.
But you just want to go up to them and go, dude, do you have a mirror?
Some of those bands, like, we were laughing at that stuff, but like later on, I really developed a really strong appreciation for a lot of that stuff. Some of those bands, some of the really pariah bands of the really late period of that stuff, like Winger, like Reb Beach, the guitar player for Winger. Like, man, I'm just gonna say, that motherfucker can play guitar. He's really good. I wish I could play guitar like Reb Beach. He's awesome. I don't know.
Well, then there are bands like Enough's Enough who with a haircut could have been Cheap Trick.
Right. They really had their pop.
Yeah, but they decided to go that other direction, and
that's
I just have I have a hard time looking at somebody with hair more than a couple of inches. Vertical, and not laughing. And I know what he's thinking right now. I had that hair too for about a year.
Sure.
Okay. When the Cure, Echo and the Bunnymen stuff, I was just like, oh shit, man, I can do that. And so I did all sorts of stuff.
Well, that was an 80s thing. Hair was going in that direction.
But no, I took it a little more serious. I bought an inversion bar and I used to hang upside down in the basement with a hairdryer and
that's
hairspray.
Project
and
Hair.
I was just like, and I learned that if I didn't wash it for several days, that it would stay that way. So I just take my fingers
Yeah.
and go like this, and it would stay.
Yeah.
And I had it for about a half a year to a year. I was at the movie theater once, heard the woman behind me tell her husband or whatever. She goes, "It's like trying to watch a movie from behind a hedge." But anyway, how I stopped was the band I was in at the time. We were going to do a public access TV show, and I had to run home and get my drums and get stuff ready. And I was going to get my hair ready, so I got my comb out and I'm going like this, and I hit this lump. I go like, oh shit, that hurts. Fuck, what is that? So I'm reaching up there and I'm feeling this like clump, and I'm like going, what the? I get out the scissors like this. It was one of those big stink bugs that like flies around the thing.
Yeah.
It had gotten there and died. It had been in there, I guess, probably for a day or two.
It was its final resting place.
I couldn't get out because all the hairspray.
It was interred in your hair.
No, I was going to tell you, I saw Winger open for Marshall Crenshaw.
Really? Now that's an odd.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
kind of thing they used to have at a Bell Theater at UAB.
Yeah. Yeah, so the next day I got all my hair cut off and just did like the Elvis ducktail for the rest of my life until this. Alrighty, cool. Now, are we about to the shame idols at this point?
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. Okay, so Bargain Tribe toured, and we went all around the USA. We actually kind of did just about the same route as Carnival season has done, except I had quit drinking, so I got to see all that stuff sober, so that was interesting. And we went up into Winnipeg, Canada. There were two guys in that band that were founder members of the band who were nuts and would fight all the time, and they had a fist fight on stage in Winnipeg, Canada. And I just, inside my head, said, they don't know it, but I've quit this band now. I'm just gonna like not say anything until we get back to Birmingham. I'm not in this band anymore. So I got out of that band and I started playing with Tom Price and the Upsetters, the blues band. So and that was just great, and it was really a lot of fun, and it brought me not wealth, but it brought me like hitherto unknown stability, where it was just like, yeah, here's my calendar. I got jobs, man. I'm playing this weekend. This is what I'm doing all through October. I was like, yeah, so I was doing that, and like, it was like I would play Friday and Saturday. I might have a little pickup gig on Wednesday, and then I was a young person, and the rest of the time I was just like hanging out, smoking cigarettes, eating Cheetos, and playing video games. You know what I mean? It was just like, and the guys in the Upsetters, again, they were older, and they were really, I got the gig because all these guys were trying to try out for that band. The excellent guitarist at the time, Rick Kurtz, left to go be on the road with Delbert McClinton, so the guitar spot was open, and like it was a real musician-y band. Like musicians would come out to see this band, and there were all these like Stevie Ray Vaughan like wannabes, all these guys with like jazz beards and like hats and stuff and the whole thing, and Topper and those guys were just like, they didn't want to have anything to do with that. I looked like Topper said, like to quote Topper, he said, "Well, you like you just got out of prison." Like I had a buzz cut like pretty much like I've got now, and I just did not, and just like wearing like just kind of like grimy work clothes, and because a punk rock kid, and who loved blues, and so Topper was like, "Well, this is perfect." So I got the gig, so I was doing that, and I had this like time on my hands, and I was like not as precarious, and I didn't have as much worry. I wasn't under the same kind of duress I had been and stuff. So it was like, I used to like to write songs, so I started writing songs. Anyway, I started the precursor to the Shame Idols was I started a punk band with some old friends of mine called Pinky the Stabber. And the drummer actually had been the drummer in Barkin Tribe. When he finally got smart and got out of that band, I was like, well, come on, let's start this band. And Chris
Hendrix was the bass player, and I'd known him since back in the Ether Dogs days. We were all a bunch of old punks. So we were young people, we were old punks. And so we started Pinky the Stabber, and I was writing songs, some of the songs that ended up being on the first Shame Idols album. We were playing at the Nick, and that band didn't travel like at all. We didn't go anywhere and do anything. So it was almost kind of like going back to an Ether Dogs type situation where it was a really worthy band, a good band, but just not a very functional band. It was a really popular local band, almost a neighborhood band, like a South Side band. We would pack out the Nick. Like a thing that was salable about that band that was created a conflict for me was we were really adept at playing covers. We could play because we were all so much into the same stuff. We could just throw out a bunch of like Dead Boys. We could play Motorhead, and we didn't have to even rehearse. We could say, "Oh, let's play that one. 1, 2, 3, go!" like that, and make it sound good. And people loved it. And so really, that became like we had a lot of gigs. We became in demand because of that. And that's not what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be in a punk rock cover band. I wanted to flex my songwriting chops. So I left. It was kind of a hard decision to make. It was a really popular band, and I quit it and started a band with these other guys who wanted to do original stuff. It was Brian Price, Jesse Suttle, who had been in a really good, I don't know if you would have ever encountered these guys. They had some stuff on the, what was that? They actually had released some stuff. I can't remember the name of the label now. They had a band called Workin' Mothers with a guy named Bill Kazaya. Mm-hmm. And they did it was like sort of over-amplified pop songs kind of stuff. It was sonically very close to what the Shame Idols ended up being. It was the drummer and guitarist from Workin' Mothers, and the bass player. I wanted the bass player too. He did this total Dee Dee Ramone thing, but he had to go in the joint. He got busted. He went to prison. So he was a great guy. We got this other bass player, Buddy Banks, and boy, he was a piece of work. But anyway, but so we had a really kick-ass band, and then I was like got to be the Paul Westerberg. I was like the principal songwriter, so I just got to I had this vehicle for my songwriting, and we started recording 4-track demos in the drummer's mom's basement, and I got on a piece of line notebook paper from American Beat Records. Somebody that worked there said, well, here's a bunch of labels. So I started sending demo cassettes out to all these labels. I was sending stuff to Interscope and all ridiculous. And I really had an agenda. I did not want to. This was in the early 90s still. And what was going on then, everybody was getting signed, and it was not necessarily a good thing for your band to get signed at that time. There was overproduction was happening big time in the wake of the Nirvana boom, the post Nirvana boom. And so I really didn't want to sign with a big label like Interscope. I didn't want to go anywhere near somebody like Warner Brothers or something like that and just have these songs that I wanted to get out there to the world and just get shelved or whatever, or get combed over in a way that I didn't want to. So I really was interested in labels like K Records and Pop Llama. There was a lot of these micro labels, especially in the Northeast. They were all over the place, but it was really fertile in the not the Northeast, the Northwest. I'd say Northwest. And I really particularly liked the Pop Llama label, and there were some bands like the Fastbacks and stuff that I was really. Fastbacks is one of my favorite bands of all time.
Yeah, I like them too.
Yeah. I was really in the early 90s. I was just absolutely gaga about the Fastbacks. There were other bands like that, like Bum, who were from Canada, did similar kind of. I liked them a lot, but the Fastbacks just hung the moon as far as I was concerned. Anyway, I sent out a bunch of cassettes, and the phone rang. My landline phone rang, in 1993. Right. And I was like, hello, and I was like, hey, is this Tim Boykin? I was like, yeah. It's like, well, this is Scott McCoy at Pop Llama Records. It's Scott McCoy from Young Fresh Fellows. Yeah. He on Pop Llama. He said, I got your cassette, and I just really love it, and I want to sign your band. I was like, oh, really? And he's like, but I can't. I was like, oh, well, why not? He's like, because I'm leaving tomorrow. I'm going on tour with REM. I'm going to be out for a year, so it's just not a good time to do this. But I really want to. I was just like,
well, why are you calling?
Yeah, really. And he said, well, here's why I'm calling you. He said, Lisa Fancher, she owns Frontier Records. She owes me $1 million favors. She's going to sign your band. Like, apparently, like, she really owed him some kind of, like, he really did her some, like, more than one solid. I'll never know the backstory on that. But, like, within a couple of weeks, the phone rang, and it was Lisa Fancher. Do you know about her?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. She's kind of a really important person in the story of, like, the LA punk scene. If you lived out there, I mean, you might have even encountered her at some point. So within a couple of weeks, Lisa Fancher, I pick up the phone. It's Lisa Fancher, Frontier Records, and she was very LA. She just had that real snark attitude. She's just like, yeah. So anyway, yeah, like this is Lisa. I'm with Frontier Records, and Scott McCoy sent me your tape. It's really good. So like, I want to sign your band, you know, and everything. And she's like, but I hope you guys are ready to go on tour. And like talking about getting off the road, like I had done a whole lot of that and everything, and it was like I wasn't against traveling and doing little stints, but I wasn't fixed to go start living out of a van.
Right.
Like, and so we immediately got in an argument on the phone, and I was just like, well, man, you know, I'm pretty comfortably set up here. I just want to put out records, and I don't want to sign with a big label and be under a bunch of pressure. I just want to put out cool records. Like, we'll travel, but we're not going to go on tour. Well, if you're not willing to go on tour, nothing's going to happen. There's probably no point in doing it. I was like, well, man, that's fine. Yeah, okay, fine. All right, fine. Yeah, fine. Click. And we, like, hung up the phone on each other. Within a very short space of time, I got a 51-page contract from Frontier Records, an exclusive recording contract. So Scott McCoy was not talking out of his ass when he said...
No, he was applying the pressure, obviously.
I mean, whatever was going on behind the scenes there, like, he was like, she's going to sign your band. Like, that's what he said. She's going to... It's not like she might sign your band or there's a good chance. He's like, she's going to sign your band. Don't worry about that. That's going to happen. And that's what happened. She sent us a 51-page contract. So we were living in Birmingham, and there wasn't like a proper music lawyer in town.
I was going to ask, what in the world would you need 51 pages for a contract for that for? It seems really...
It was in my experience with that sort of thing, it was actually a pretty good contract because it was an old contract. This is Frontier Records. At this point, this was like 1993, 94, right around that time. And this was like their standard exclusive recording contract. And it had been gone over and lawyered back and forth and amended and like that. And so it had become like, and it had a million little like stipulations, some that were favorable for the label, a lot that were favorable for the artists because it had been gone over. So it's Lisa Fancher, I want to say, she's like pretty awesome person. Like I told that story, you know, she's kind of this, she's old, she's really a rare creature in this world. You remember that frumpy LA punk, or just that frumpy 70s punk rock girl, American punk girl with the perm and the cigarette and everything sucks kind of. Yeah. That's so much Lisa. She's not so much like that now, but she was that type of, talking about Rock Scene magazine. Right. I mean, that's, you know, that's how punk rock women were in the United States at that time. She was one of those.
Well, the go-to attitude in Los Angeles is to be impressed, but to not show that you're impressed.
Yeah. She always played everything down. Getting to know her, she was great to know. I was such a fanboy of stuff, and she would be like, yeah, the Dolls were out here. They used to be on TV all the time, local. They were terrible. I mean, she loved them, but, you know, she would always tell stories like that. She's like, yeah, the Stooges moved out here. Man, they played at, you know, like the Whiskey or whatever, and like Iggy was passed out in the doorway in his pink hot pants, and people were stepping over him, you know, and stuff like that. And I was just enthralled to hear all these like all this dish on my heroes, you know, it was fantastic. But yeah, so the 51-page contract. We took it to a Shame Idols. We're still these young idiots, and there was no music lawyer in Birmingham. We found just like an old Birmingham contract lawyer downtown Birmingham, and we took the contract to this guy. He went over it and did his little jobby job, and then we went. These weirdo musicians, and we're in his office downtown. This little kind of low rent contract lawyer. He's like, "Well, I went through this contract, and I'll tell you boys, it's not real good, but it's not real bad." I mean, and that really was. That's what kind of 51-page contract this was. It wasn't real good, and it wasn't real bad. There were a million stipulations where if the label didn't do certain things, like that, we were not like bound to the contract. Right. We could do stuff, but we didn't have to if the label didn't do this, and 5 zillion things. So so it was a really good contract, and it was so great, man. It was like really, I got to have a little day in the sun, man, with the Shea Miles. Stuff happened like. It was really like within a certain budget. It was like, and like that was the thing. I didn't want to do big budget anything, and it was like, well, where do you guys want to record? We weren't going to do it here in Birmingham, and I was like, man, I'd like to work with Kurt Block. I wanted to work with Kurt Block, from the Fastbacks, and he was going around producing all kinds of projects. And it was like, well, and they tried to get Kurt. It's like, well, Kurt can't do it. He's in the middle of a project right now. And I don't remember if it was my idea or their idea, but I was very aware. I think it was probably my idea because I was a big fan. You remember Super Snaz, the Japanese? Sure. I loved them, and they recorded the album Super Stupid at Egg Studio in Seattle, and I was like, well, can we get Conrad Uno? And she was like, yeah, we can get Conrad Uno. That's my Lisa imitation.
You do really good imitations.
But anyway, so we went up and did the first album, I Got Time. We flew up there. I was white knuckle. I was like sober flying. It was the first time I'd flown in an airline since I was like a kid in the little kid in the 70s. And it was scared. I was just scared to death flying. And but we went up there and did the album, and it was on a real small budget, but it was perfect conditions for that. We were very rehearsed. We played live constantly at that time. We were like this really loud, pummeling, just incendiary. I really thought of us more of as a punk band than anything. We had pop songs, but like I was saying, like Fastbacks. Like, right. To me, the Fastbacks are a punk rock band. People younger than us may not understand that, but you and I understand that the Fastbacks were just a really fucking good punk band. Right. They had to have great songs, and that was my aesthetic. And so we went up. It was a really small budget. I think the first Shea Miles album, the whole total budget, flights, everything for the whole album was like $5,000, which that's nothing. That's really low ball. So yeah, we had that whole album tracked, mixed, finished within like about a week, about 5 days. About $1,000 a day or whatever for everything. I mean, not really. I mean, that included flights and everything. And so we did that. That album came out great. And and as far as Day in the Sun, still it being a day in the sun, we got a Christmas card from Frontier Records. It had a cartoon drawn on it, and it was distinctive looking. And I talked to Lisa on the phone. I was just like, hey man, I got that Christmas card that's like really cool. Man, the illustration, what's the deal with that? That's like a really neat looking. She said, oh, my friend Jaime did that. I said, Jaime, who's it? Jaime Hernandez. It was Jaime Hernandez who did Love and Rockets comics. And I was just like, wow, that's really cool. Like, I'm a big Love and Rockets fan, and Jaime Hernandez is just like God tier status to me. She's just like, man, he and I are old drinking buddies. We're friends. I'm like, man, it sure would be cool if he could do the cover art on our albums. And she's like, he owes me a million favors. Like, so yeah.
That's the story of your life. Somebody owing somebody else a favor.
Man, that's how things were going at that time. So yeah, so Jaime Hernandez, like, which going back to the 80s, Marjorie and I just like, we kind of came up like reading like Love and Rockets comics. Marjorie, a lot of, I call her Marjorie, but she grew up being called Maggie. And a friend of ours, Susan Benjamin, like, they're Maggie and Hopi. Like, they like, it was so weird, like, when you look at those comics, that's Maggie. Yeah, that's Maggie from Love and Rockets. It's her. It's just one of those weird things where it just coincides. It's not
Yeah, and
consciously
Susan
based.
looks like Hopi. I mean, she really looks like
Yeah,
her.
yeah, and back then, like, just they were, 80s, like Maggie and Hopi, like Susan, like, had like real short cropped hair, and she's like, yeah, fuck you, and Marjorie, they were punk rock kids, and Marjorie was sort of more sweet nature. It's like, I don't know, do you think he likes me, kind of thing,
Right.
and like that. So, but yeah, but he ended up, Jaime Hernandez. He did the artwork on the first and the second album. We went back into the second album with a big $8,000 budget to do the second album, and we got to be there for like 8 days or some shit like that. And but anyway, the Frontier folded operations really pretty much as we were getting that album out.
So it's just the two albums then.
It's just the two albums.
Okay, because those are the two I have. Which I got way after.
Yeah, there's no extra. The only other stuff to get is just if you can get it on vinyl. Lisa gave those releases to Monster Records in hopes that we would do a Spain tour, which we wanted to do really bad. They put the albums out, and nobody over here got a penny, a farthing for that. We just gave it to them so that we could get over there. But they just put them out and sold them and made money off of our shit, and we didn't know the Spain tour happened.
Well, Spain is a good place to play.
So I'm told.
You know Deke Dickerson, right?
Well, that name's familiar.
It was Dave and Deke combo. He's like, if you saw a picture of him, you go, yeah, that guy.
Okay, yeah.
I did a podcast with him a few back, and he plays Spain all the time. He's in Spain like every 2 months. They have festivals aplenty in Spain.
Yeah, these old Spanish punks, man, they like my shit, but they won't let me come play in their country.
Really? Because from what I see, they're like paying people to do it. Like they pay his airfare, they put him up, they feed him all this good food. And
hey, if you're listening to this podcast, if you're in Spain and you like the Shea Models and the Lolas, and I know you do, please let me come play in Spain. I'd really like to come play in Spain.
If he's got it.
Yeah, please check around for me if you would. I've been to Japan. I haven't traveled internationally extensively, but I've never been to Europe. And I'm pissed off about it. I'd really like to go.
You've never really been to Europe?
Never been to Europe.
I lived in Germany for a couple of years.
Wow.
I was a DJ on a party boat.
That's awesome. I'm jealous. I'd love to go to Germany. Just anything Europe. If I could go to Germany or shit. If I could play in Greece, I don't care. Just anything. I'd love to. Even England.
Well, later on when we're eating dinner, ask me how I got there. I don't want to go into it.
Okay. Yeah, no,
it's a good story.
I got to know.
Yeah, it's a good story.
Okay,
so,
yeah.
I got all sorts. I don't want to take up the time with my shit. But I was also going to tell you, when you were talking about your first band,
yeah,
he was in my first band.
Oh, dude.
And
how old were y'all?
Like 18, 19, 20.
Okay.
I worked at a gourmet restaurant. We were trying to come up with a name. We couldn't come up with a name. We kept having all these things. They were stupid. We didn't like them. But I worked at a gourmet restaurant, and he got this giant box of cheese promotions, and it's from his company called Cheeses from France. And we looked inside, and there was like some posters, some T-shirts, some stickers and shit. And I was like, dude, if we call ourselves the Cheeses from France, we got all this free promo shit we can use. So we became the Cheeses from France. And then
that's fucking brilliant.
And then what we did was we only played one song. We just played Neil Young's Heart of Gold, and we didn't play it very well. And we just played it, and we waited until people figured out that we weren't going to leave. And then we would basically force the audience to come and force us off stage. So we'd play it for like 20, 30 minutes.
So it was kind of situationist.
Yeah, and people would be looking up going like, when's the next band and then eventually they started attacking us. Now I kept a bunch of drumsticks in my socks so that when people would grab my drumsticks, I'd grab another one and keep going. He only played, what was it, 2 chords, 3 chords the whole time, just over and over again,
3
right?
chords, 3 chords.
See,
over and over
that
and over
sounds
again.
like potential
Right.
greatness.
Well, he got bored because that's all you do. So we set up a music stand and put a Penthouse magazine on it so he could read while he was playing because all he
so you
played.
could look at tits while he was playing
Exactly.
guitar.
So I have a live recording of this. Our guitar player took the pick guard off of his guitar and replaced it with a cutout copy of Kiss Rock and Roll Over, the album.
Yeah.
So we're up there doing this shit. The show's over. We've been on for a half hour. You can hear it on the tape. You can hear people rioting. People are like pushing us, pulling me off the drums.
Yeah.
Unplugging our shit.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, somebody stole his Penthouse during this fracas of all this thing. And the very last thing you hear on the tape is him going, Can I have my penthouse back, please?
That's awesome.
That was our first show.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So, okay, enough about me. So the label folded 2 albums out.
Yeah.
Did they do pretty well? I mean,
the albums, I have the impression that they sold pretty well. They're still available from Frontier Records. Lisa's still, I mean, she's had some really big selling releases. And I mean, I'm not implying that the Shea Models are among those, but I have the impression that the albums sold pretty well. When we were traveling around the country, the Shea Models, we would go into a mall, in like Minnesota or something, and go into a record store in there, and there would be like our album. So it was available all over the place. We weren't seeing it in cutout bins either.
Right.
So I have the impression that it did pretty well. I think it did better critically than it did commercially.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about Lisa is what she did, at least this, I mean, I could be wrong, but this is my take on the whole story of why the Shea Models thing even happened the way it did. Like the big, she was really early on the scene, getting those early important hardcore records out, Circle Jerks and Red Cross and Adolescence. But the one that really did big for her was the first Suicidal Tendencies album.
Oh God.
Yeah.
I sold so many of those out of my store.
Man, that record, that made her, that really did. My understanding, if I'm wrong, I will cop to it. If somebody goes, no, Tim, here's how you're wrong. Well, this is my understanding. Like, that album sold and has continued to be a huge, huge seller for her.
Mm-hmm.
And, she liked punk rock. I think she did that Suicidal thing because she just knew a winner when she saw one. And she put it out there, and it just knocked out of the park.
We couldn't keep it in.
Right.
We get a box of them on Monday. They'd be gone on Tuesday.
One of the biggest selling. I'm pretty sure it's one of the biggest selling hardcore albums of all time. And the thing is, like, Lisa loves pop and she loves power pop, and she liked what the Shea Models were doing. She probably liked some other things better than us, but she liked us well enough to like spend money to put our shit out, and I think she knew she wasn't really gonna make money off of us. I think it sold. I'm sure she recouped her costs,
right,
her minimal costs on those records. But like, she put out all kinds of like pop stuff, like Flop, stuff that I really liked. Like, briefly we were label mates with Flop. You remember Flop?
Vaguely.
They were a Seattle band, and they did really similar kind of music to Shea Models and Fastbacks. Is that kind of stuff, kind of over amplified, kind of fast and loud pop,
right,
punk stuff with a lot of Buzzcocks influence and that kind of thing. So like, she was putting stuff out like that. Like, Flop was not a big seller. They were a really worthy band. I really admired them. I thought they were fantastic. They, at one point, they jumped ship and they were signed with Epic Records. And Epic, man, Epic didn't do them any favors. Epic did not treat those guys well. They didn't promote them. That's, we're sitting here talking about it. It's like, yeah, I think I heard of that. You know what I mean? Right. It shouldn't be that way. They were a really good band. And they actually, went back to Frontier Records before they just disbanded. But anyway, so like Lisa, she turned me on to like a bunch of really cool freak beat stuff. She loved like British Invasion stuff. She was way down deep into that kind of thing. She told me all these war stories about like she was hanging around. She was a teenager. She was hanging around. Like, you see the Runaways movie?
Yeah.
I actually thought it was pretty good. I was ready to be grouchy about that. I was like, there's some bullshit in there, but pretty enjoyable. Kind of the Cadillac Records of punk rock movies. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
not entirely
Cadillac
accurate.
Records wasn't.
There was some Hollywood bullshit in that, but I enjoyed it.
But I was like going,
it's a movie,
they could have done better.
They certainly could have done better.
Yeah.
But
they tried.
Right. But like the scenes when they're like putting the band together and they've got like the $14 guitars and all that kind of stuff. That more or less really did happen. And like, Lisa Fancher was like there. Mm-hmm. She was physically there when they were putting the band together and trying people out and stuff. She had worked at Bomb. when she was like 16, 17 years old. She like went way back in the scene and stuff. So she was really into all kinds of like freak beat stuff. She gave me all these cassettes. She turned me on to like The Move and stuff.
It's one of my very favorite bands.
Right. She turned me on to Idle Rays.
Jeff Lynne stuff.
Yeah, Jeff Lynne stuff. She turned me on to that.
I'm kind of an Anglophile myself.
Right. She's that's the thing. Like, she put out all this punk stuff. She's right there. She's a punk rock kid. She was, had worked at Bump when it was a zine, and then they transitioned it to, I guess, some kind of an early punk indie label.
Yeah.
And so she was like, oh, okay, this is how you do that and stuff. And then she went and started Frontier. But yeah, she was giving me cassettes. Like, the first time I ever heard Garden of My Mind by the Mickey Finn was on a tape, that she gave me, and all this kind of stuff that was actually really influential.
That's really a cool song.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite records in the world.
And it's really kind of, for its time period, it's pretty freaky.
It's kind of maybe an urban myth that like Jimmy Page maybe is playing guitar. It might be him, But anyway, we did that second album. All right, that album to me arguably is like maybe not as good as the first one. It's not as punchy. Like, the guitars are turned really up. The drums are a little buried. It was hastily mixed because we went up there and we made the record. And Lisa, and on both jaunts to Seattle, she flew up from LA to just see what she was paying for, see how things were going. And anyway, she came up when we were making the second album, Rocket Cat. And she was up there, and then she like disappeared. She flew back. Part of her job being in Seattle was she was supposed to pay Conrad. Yeah. And she like disappeared. And we started talking because Conrad had Pop Law. He had a label. He wasn't totally outside of the music industry. And during that time, he had already scored with the President of the United States of America. Right. So, he was like, man, we'll make something happen. Don't worry, guys. But we did it. We pulled a sting on Lisa. Like, he said, call Lisa. Tell her that I'm pissed and I'm going to sit on the tapes unless she pays for this stuff to put. Like, the label hadn't folded yet. She just skipped out on her tab, right?
Right.
So I called Lisa, and I don't know if this is cool to put out or not. It's a funny story, though. He said, tell Lisa that I'm pissed. He wasn't pissed. Tell Lisa I'm pissed. We're not going to put this out. She's not going to be able to put the record out. I'm not going to give her the tapes. And so I called her and told her, and she was like, okay. So she came up off the money, and the album got released, had cover art by Jaime Hernandez and all that kind of stuff. It came out. It did really well critically, but that was the end of that label. That was maybe they did other stuff after that, but I don't know what that may have been the last release Frontier Records did. Anyway, so at that point, I had been continuing to write songs for a projected third Shea Models album, but I didn't have a label. I fired the bass player Buddy Banks, the guy that said it was a piece of work. He was a great guy. We loved him. We had to fire him. He was drunk and he was non-functioning. So we turned into a three-piece band. It was Jesse Suttle, Brian Price, and me. And I was starting to move in more of a a pure pop, power pop direction from the rawer punk sound of the Shea Model stuff. I always loved the Birds and Flamin' Groovies and that kind of thing.
Yeah, we're going to see Roger McGuinn day after tomorrow.
Oh, wow. He's always just great, isn't he?
Yeah, it's him and Chris Hellman and
he's
Marty
always
Stewart
Roger McGuinn
at the Ryman in Nashville.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. Jealous. Anyway, but so I was moving in that direction, and like my label had folded, Frontier had folded, and I had self-financed us to studio technology had really come far. We were still recording at ADAT, but I was recording at a local studio in Vestavia, Alabama, Denial Labs Studios, owned by really adept, talented producer engineer. Well, I produced it, but he was the engineer, Daniel Ferris, Denial Labs Studios. So we recorded an album there that was supposed to be a third Shea Models album, and I was just going to shop it. right? So I was shopping what was supposed to be the third Shea Models record, and it was tough going. People knew the Shea Models, but people were going like, man, this really doesn't sound like the Shea Models. I can tell it's you, but it's really different.
And I can completely understand that because when I got the Shea Models after I'd already had the first three Lolas. Right?
Yeah, it's really
and
different.
I listened to them and I was like, well, yeah, I would have known it was you.
It's the same guy, but sonically, it's sort of different. It's a different sonic agenda, and it was obviously things were moving in a different direction. And I, pretentiously or not, I was just like, well, yeah, I know, but fuck all of y'all. I'm an artist, and I'm gonna make art, whether it's easy to market or not. And that was basically what I was running into. Labels were getting back with me, man, this is really good, but like, don't make it hard for us to market stuff. If you want us to like release an album, give us something we can market. Anyway, I ended up, ended up like shopping stuff to people like Bruce Brodeen and stuff. And some people were just not really situated at the time to like do a proper release. I contacted Jeremy Morris, who really deserves recognition and kudos for the Lola's record project starting, and here it is, like however many since 1998, 99. Here it's still going. So Jeremy Morris, I got in contact with him, and he's like, I really want to put this out. I'm dead set on putting this out. He's like, but really, it's at that point the drummer had quit, the bass player had quit, because it's like, well, this is just not a sellable thing. It's not cool anymore. And I was just like, fine, fuck you guys. I own the tapes.
Sure.
And I'm gonna shop this. And I had put together a new band with a new drummer and a new bass player. The old Carnival season drummer, Mark Reynolds, and then a good friend of mine, Waylon Smith. And that's like. The album was already finished, but those guys ended up being on the second album, Silver Dollar Sunday. That's who's playing on that. But so Jeremy Morris, like he's like this. Do you know Jeremy?
I don't think so. No.
He's from Portage, Michigan. He's just a real straight shooting Michigan guy. He just very, like he doesn't cuss. He's very devoutly religious. That was a little wonky at times. He's a hell of a guy though. He's a really good guy. And he was like, I love this, and I'm gonna put it out, and this is my kind of stuff. He does his own music, and he does like really spot on like jangle pop stuff. It's very Beatle-esque. He's a really
I love that stuff. So.
Yeah. He's a really tripped out guy. He's older. He's kind of a Christian hippie or something. I don't know, but his music's excellent. But anyway, he said, this is so different. Like you really ought to think about maybe just calling it a new thing. It's so power pop. It's not like the stuff you were doing. And I was feeling that way too, because my other guys had like quit, and I was sort of low key pissed off at them. Not anymore. We're all good friends now. So I was like, yeah, it's a new band, and this is a really dumb to tell the story. My dog was named Lola. So I was just like, yeah, a new name, we'll call it the Lolas. How about that? But I kind of liked that because it was sort of off kilter. Jeremy was not really thrilled with that as a name, so I knew I was on the right track. It was sort of, it was sort of left the center. It's like,
this already, but there are several other bands also called the Lolas.
There's a really good band of girls coming out of the nation of Panama.
Right.
A hard rock band called Lolas. They're very good, and I have nothing critical or bad to say about them.
But then there's the other one.
There's another Lolas?
Yeah, I saw them on YouTube, and you actually made a comment on there. So you said something like, hey, why don't you look up and see that there's already a band called the Lolas?
I sort of remember that now. Yeah. I think they like altered their name, didn't they?
I don't know.
There was another band called like Carnival Season, and there wasn't much danger of them like really replacing the not all that illustrious legacy of Carnival Season, but these were just like kids having a party band or whatever, and like we were sort of like, yeah, you should probably change your name. I mean, we weren't gonna like litigate or anything, and they ended up changing their name.
Well, you heard the story about Love, Arthur Lee's Love.
Oh,
They were originally called the Grassroots.
Oh shit! No, I didn't know that.
and the guy who was going to sign them, apparently there was some sort of deal that soured. And so he had this other band that he was going to put out, so he called them the Grassroots just to fuck them.
Really?
Yeah, they had to change their name to Love.
Just to juke them.
Yeah.
Oh, man. No, I didn't know that. That's awesome. Anyway, so so started doing that, and so that was the thing when the first Lola's album came out. a band existed, but it wasn't the guys that were on the record except for me.
Right.
And then we set about doing an album with it. So it's just always been a record project. There's not a functioning gigging band. There is a band that appears on the newest Lola's album, but it can't go show up somewhere and play right now.
Right, but if you had a show to do, you could probably whip together a couple dudes and teach them the
Man,
song,
I got a
right?
good drummer. I need a really good singing bass player. And man, I tell you what, in Birmingham, Alabama, there's not one.
Oh,
There is not one. The music scene here is not what it was when I moved here in 1982.
yeah, Indianapolis, for being as boring as it is, actually had a fairly decent
It is a
music
cool
scene.
town. I actually played there on a tour backing up John P. Strom.
You know John Strom?
Oh shit, man, he lives here.
He lives here in Birmingham.
He moved to Birmingham.
Oh, some connections. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
Dale from the Vulgar Boatman and Tim Carroll, who I'm going to talk to in Nashville
Yeah.
next week,
Okay.
they were in the Gizmos. Remember the Gizmos?
I know because of.
I was the Gizmos roadie when I was in high school.
Oh shit.
That's
okay.
how I ended up being at the Blitz benefit at CBGB's the night that the Dead Boys and Blondie played there with Robert Fripp on guitar.
I just know,
I have pictures.
like
I'll show you some pictures.
bits of the story, and I remember seeing pictures of Belushi playing drums
Yep.
and Roxy.
He played drums, and
it'd be
Divine
cool to
was
be
on
in New
vocals.
York. Huh?
Divine was on vocals.
Oh shit, that's
Yes.
so great.
It was, and here I am. I'm 17. I'm not even old enough to be in there, but CBGB's never carded me once, ever. And I'm standing there and I'm seeing all these people, and then like Joey Ramone was like standing on a ladder backstage.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I hadn't seen the Ramones live at this point, and I'm like, there he is, and it was just like, it was just, for a kid who was 17, it was one of the best nights of my life.
Yeah,
honestly,
it would
it
have
really
had to have
was.
been.
Yeah.
In the mid '80s, when I played at CB's, the sound system was really fantastic.
They had a good sound guy.
Yeah.
And if you'd give him like a $5, he'd record you and give you the cassette.
There's a cassette. There was one cassette made of a Carnival season set at CB's, and I think maybe a little bit of that is on the Arco thing I'm going to give you. Like we did a cover. We would do a couple of covers, just like fun stuff that we liked, and we did Laser Love by T-Rex. So there's I think that's on there. Us doing Laser Love. Or it might have been Motivating by Hanoi Rocks.
Well, if you've got a box of those and one to spare, I'd love to have them.
Absolutely, yeah. We got to make sure that happens before you head out.
All right, cool. And I'll give.
If you're in Fultondale, we're in Gardendale, so I mean.
Oh, we're not there anymore. We checked out.
Oh, you checked out. Anyway, we
are free agents at this point.
Okay,
so.
we're just. I'm gonna make sure you get that CD.
Yeah, and I'll make sure that you hear some of the Steve Kowalski stuff, because you will not believe how something this good can be totally just lost to the ether of time.
Man, that's the way it is, man. That's
the songs are so good. I did a promotional video for them. I'll show you all this stuff later on. We go out to eat. I can show you stuff on that.
Very good.
Because this is about you. It's not me.
It's all about me.
Okay, so Ballerina Breakout has come out at this point, right?
Yes.
And I assume it's probably done fairly well critically, right? Because it's a good album.
It did. All it was really was a feather in my cap. I did make grocery money off of it, which, as having been chiefly a performer and recording artist, like grocery money off of a recording of your own songs is like nice to get. It's really hard to make grocery money, or occasionally rent money off of that. So, but mainly it was just a feather in my cap. Yeah, it got really nice notices.
Yeah. Now the second one, that was the first one that I got. Now I remember after I got, like I say, I got a bunch of good stuff all at once. Cotton Mather, Miracle Bra, Shazam. I mean, I mean, I was just playing stuff. Anyway, so I'm listening to it, and this is going to sound wrong, okay? But your songs do what I want them to do. In other words, when I'm listening to a song, there are things I expect that I want them to do. I want them to build to like a really catchy chorus, and also what I'm finding strange right now is that your speaking voice is a little bit Tom Waitsian.
Yeah. People point that out all the time.
But your singing, I mean, there's vocal harmonies on there that are crystal clear and gorgeous. So I guess you can vocally multitask.
The air down here is terrible, and I also used to be a heavy smoker. When we made that like on those early Lola's albums, I was a 3-pack a day smoker.
But are you the one doing all the harmonies? Because it
Yeah,
sounds
that's-
like you're harmonizing with yourself.
That's all me.
That's what I
Yeah, on the first album, Jesse is on there a little bit, but really most of the track, like he exited, he left the band while we were making the record. And the thing is I wrote the songs and I constructed the harmonies, and I knew how to do them, and nobody else knew how to do them.
Right.
You know, which is, and that's really been the way it's gone ever since. Like that's made it a record. That's why it's always really been a record project.
Right. So, and then the other big surprise for me is like, you know, say for instance, Radio Dios. I mean, that could have been right in the middle of the Who sellout.
Right.
And
Yeah.
nobody
yeah,
would
yeah.
notice. And you know, I'm hearing those power chords and shit, and I'm like
Yeah.
going, God damn, this guy must be from, I don't know, somewhere, blah 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 blah. And then I found out you were from Birmingham, Alabama, and you're gonna knock me over with a feather. I'm like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Really? Birmingham, Alabama? I mean, that's weird. And so that's, you know, that and I think the email that I sent you, I was asking you, I was like, are you really from Birmingham?
Yeah, kinda. You know, I mean, I was born here at St. Vincent's Hospital in 1966, and you know, and then we moved around a lot. You know, so I've got that kind of rootless thing. I mean, I think that I probably sound more Southern than I think I do. You know, I'm not as Bama as folks that are from here, and
No, the first time I went to England,
Yeah.
and I'm talking just like I'm talking now.
Right.
To me, it doesn't sound like anything. To me, it just sounds like my voice.
Right.
But I'm trying to buy some bootlegs from this guy in a stall, and he's like, "What's that? You want to buy some bootlegs from me?"
Right,
And
right.
I'm like, well, hold on a second. Are you making fun of me?
Right.
And apparently, that's what I sounded like to him.
Wow.
So,
Sounded like
yeah,
quite
I'm
the
like-
hayseed.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
And again, I'm going to intercede here. Nothing against the state of Alabama. So far, so good. We've had a lovely, delightful time.
Everybody been nice to
I've
y'all?
never been to Alabama. I've never been this far deep south except Florida.
Cool.
Or New Orleans.
Yeah.
So we didn't really know what to expect, except probably get called shug and hun a lot by waitresses.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been totally fine, and it's not that honestly that different from where we're from. I mean, we come from a pretty red state.
Yeah.
So, and it was funny because I had kind of bandied. I think I showed you that video I did for Deke Dickerson where he shows off some of his stuff.
Oh
that he got
yeah,
from-
that was really cool. You know, going back to like me busting into the music scene here, and I took it for granted for a long time, and it's completely changed now. When Marjorie was working at the Cavern Club, and I was a teenage punk rock guitar player playing in this punk band, we were playing there. What the deal was, and I was young and I didn't have the scope to understand this, but what it was like downtown Birmingham had been this little thriving industrial metropolis long before I got here. And there was money going all over the place. It was like steel money, man. It was that ascension that happened in the United States, especially after world wars, when Europe is trying to stagger to its feet, and the United States is going, oh, we're doing pretty good. We made a lot of money off of that shit.
We can sell you some steel to rebuild
We'll
all
sell
the
you some
things that we
steel.
bombed.
Yeah, that's right.
It was
So
called the Pittsburgh of the South.
Pittsburgh of the South. So long before I got here, there had been this economy, and downtown Birmingham was this thriving place with stores and money, and people lived there, and da big city, ha la la la, like that. When I moved here, it was dead. It was a dead steel town, and downtown was a ghost town. It was a dead economy. So that's a perfect place for punk rock kids to play in the ruins and like run around and do stuff and not get chased and called faggot and all that kind of stuff. We were down there like in this like cityscape, like there's no one here. Hello, echo, like that. And we were running around like, hey man, I'm gonna spray paint funk on the wall, and you know what I mean. And we were
And
just.
I assume if you wanted to open a venue of some sort, rent was probably cheap down there.
Rent was cheap, and that was what the Cavern was. That's where we were playing, and like the Tim and Natalie that owned it, like they were kind of odd people, and they thought we were terribly regressive into playing. They were like new wavers, and we were playing like punk rock, and they thought we were filthy and nasty, which we were. But but they let us play in their club, and they booked like bands like the UK Subs and Circle Jerks to play there and stuff. And so it was fantastic. Like nobody was studying us, so we were able to develop, artistically and not be really under any kind of duress. Not any kind of like capitalistic duress. It was like, we need to do this instead of this if you want to get anywhere. Because it was like, basically, well, you're not going to get anywhere. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's like, well, if I'm not going to get anywhere,
There's no
I'm
pressure.
going to do whatever the fuck I want
Yeah.
and develop in a really natural way artistically. I won't ever have any money, but I won't ever be like pushed in this or that direction. So.
Did a lot of bands come through here?
Yeah, but all
Yeah,
like.
you name 'em, they play.
Well, because where we are, at least there in the early 80s, nobody came to Indiana. Nobody. And we had to go to Chicago
Okay.
or Cincinnati
Right.
or occasionally Columbus
Yeah.
to see a show
Right.
if somebody came through, because almost nobody ever played Indianapolis. Now, here's a good example. When I worked at a record store, it was 1980, and we got a phone call from the local promoters, and they go, "Hey, we got a question for you." Okay, shoot. He goes, "John Cale, is that the guy that does cocaine?" And we said, "No, that's J.J. Cale."
Oh,
And we
yeah.
heard the guy put his hand on the phone and go, "We got the wrong Cale!"
Oh my God.
That's Indiana in the early
But
80s.
see, the early 80s, what you've got to figure in is geographically our approximation to Atlanta,
Yeah.
Nashville,
Right.
Athens, Georgia, which was going on in Athens during the early 80s.
So we were
How
like
far
a
away is
stop.
Athens from here?
Let's see, Atlanta's about 2 hours, Athens is about 45 minutes, so probably around
That's
3
not far at
hours.
all then, really.
No, it's not far. So we got all the Athens bands, we got
Okay.
the Atlanta bands, we got like
Yeah.
Jason and Scorcher from Nashville.
Yeah.
So you had all that, early 80s alt stuff going on in the South. All of a sudden became super cool.
Yeah, the Dickies
We had-
played at the Nick on their way to Atlanta and on a Wednesday
Right.
night, stuff like
but
that.
then you had we had a nice mid-range venue, so we had like a smaller one. You'd get swimming pool cues, and
Yeah.
the Nick, you'd get people at Black Flag would play there.
Right.
But then you'd have like a little larger venue, and you could get X, the Cramps, the Ramones, like all that would come through. So
Yeah.
So I mean,
It was great back then. Like you'd have bands like that
I
come
was going
through,
out every weekend to see a band.
and then it didn't matter if you just like called Dan Nolan. He was in charge of booking the day. You go like, I have a band. We're called whatever. He'd be like, okay, Wednesday night. See you guys. You know what I mean? It was just like a wide open. It wasn't like, what kind of stuff are you guys doing? It was just like, okay, yeah, we need a band that night.
Now, things didn't happen like that in Indiana. It was about 82 or 83 when this friend of mine started booking bands that we actually started seeing, because we kept telling them, we kept saying, Husker Du only charges $300 for a show.
Yeah.
I said, you could bring them down here. They could make their money back very easily.
Right.
You'd probably make a lot of money, and everything would be great.
Right.
And it was like $300. I don't know. That sounds like
Ah.
the replacements were only like $200 when they first started asking if they could come down. But then finally he started bringing them, and so we had like Robin Hitchcock came through, and the Red Hot Chili Peppers played at this like really little bar before they were big, and we had the replacements came a couple times. And I was in a band at the time, and we opened for almost all of these bands because the promoter was too lazy to
Did you guys open for
actually.
the Mats?
Twice.
Yeah, the Carnival season we opened for the Mats twice.
Yeah, and the version of the Vulgar Boatman I was in, actually I was in two bands that opened for the Replacements the same night. The early version of the Vulgar Boatman, and then the band I had at the time.
Oh,
the,
God, that's
the Math
awesome.
Bats.
The what?
The Math Bats.
The Math Bats. That's great. That's a great name.
So anyway, so this guy was like lazy, so he'd book a band, and the venue was only like a block away from my record store. So he'd book a band, he'd come over and go, "Hey, I got Husker Du coming in on the 12th. You guys want to open?" Fuck yeah. Okay, my job's done. And then he'd be done. That way he wouldn't have to like call any bands or contact anybody.
That's
So we
awesome.
ended up like opening for like literally everyone that came through town. Everybody
Those
hated-
had to have been great shows.
Yeah, they were, but everybody hated us for it because there were other bands and they weren't getting any shows at all. And then word started getting around. They were like, "Oh, which one of you guys is blowing Bill to get all these shows?" And instead of saying no one, we just point to our guitar player because he was kind of a dick. We're like, "Yeah."
Yeah, he's He's
he
good at what
he
he
wasn't
does.
really a dick. We were just fucking with him. So so now we're after the second record now. Something you ought to know. There was a little time between those two records, right? Like 2 or 3 years, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Jeez, what was I doing? Okay, 2001 was, I think, Silver Dollar Sunday, maybe.
That sounds right.
Okay. During that time period, 2001 to about 2003, I was absolutely destitute. I could not rub 2 pennies together I couldn't afford to buy a pack of cigarettes. I went to a state technical college on a Pell Grant and studied graphics. It's kind of under duress from my family. They're like, man, maybe this music thing is not working out for you, you know.
Were they generally encouraging before that? Up to this point, were they like cool?
When
with
we
it,
were
or?
kids, when we were kids, they were like, they encouraged us. They weren't like, hey, we think what you're doing is cool, but they were like, they facilitated us doing it. They were like, yes, you can rehearse in the house and, you know, stuff like that. And when I was a teenager, they bought me like a cheap electric guitar, which was awesome, you know, that kind of thing. But like later on, well, you know, and like I'm telling you, like late 80s, early 90s, like I was like brand new sober, and at that point they were like, we don't care what you do as long as you don't drink. That was actually great for me because I was like, well, okay, I'm just gonna like practice guitar and smoke cigarettes and go to AA meetings and maybe write songs. I don't know. So there was a lot of that. But you know, like by the early 2000s, they were kind of like, yeah, you know, your brother's, he's a lawyer, he's gone to law school, and like this, like you really have not amounted to much of anything. I was like, yeah, I know, you know, because that's what I was born to be, is nothing, you know. So yeah. So I was going to tech college and studying graphics, which was not something I was interested in doing. That was just kind of a stopgap. So that's really kind of what was happening in those years. I came into a small amount of money and got set up, and I was renting a house in Irondale, where we are now, and I built a little project studio in the basement, and that was where I recorded Something You Ought to Know.
Did you have plenty of dogs at the time?
My parents had plenty of dogs.
Is that it? I was always wondering where the idea for that song came from.
I wrote that song when I was in a separation and going through a divorce, and briefly was staying at my parents' house, and they had plenty of dogs. The gal that was sort of a rough time. I mean, you know, divorce, lots of fun, right? Yeah. That was sort of a rough time, and the living situation I was getting out of had been really chaotic and kind of scary. So I was staying at my parents', and that was scary in a different way, but it was a lot more equilibrium than I was used to up to that time. And my parents just had a bunch of noisy dogs. So I just kind of wrote that kind of a fun song about it. Like, there was a lot of dogs.
Okay, well, the other one I got to ask about before we move on is Tim's mom. What did Tim's mom do? That was
when I was going to school.
Okay.
And couldn't rub 2 pennies together, but I was going to school, and my mom said, "Here is a credit card. You could use this for school supplies, or if you get into trouble, you know, if you need something essential." And so I bought a mic pre with it because I needed a mic pre because I was recording shit on my little cheap E-Tower computer, you know, because I needed that.
Right.
And
that's
like,
an emergency.
Yeah, that was an emergency. I needed a mic pre, so I bought this kind of a nice little PV mic pre, and I was like, man, you know, yeah, she didn't really intend for me to buy this, so, and I can't pay. It was like a $75 mic pre. I was like, I can't really pay. There's no physical way for me to pay her for this, so I'll write a song. So I wrote a song
for your mom,
basically saying this is for Tim's mom, who paid for the cool mic preamp.
That's what I wanted to know. I couldn't understand what you were saying. I was like going,
this
I was
is for
like,
Tim's
is in
mom,
there somewhere.
Who paid for the cool mic preamp.
And so what did your mom think when she heard it?
She loved it. She was like, that's very nice, thank you, and I will accept that as payment for the mic.
That's cool.
Yes.
That's
yeah,
really
I did,
nice.
yeah.
Okay. So now there was a bit less time between that one and Dr. Apache, right?
Yeah.
Dr. Apache came out fairly quickly after that one, at least comparatively so.
You know, it was recorded in the same studio at that same place. So yeah, it was during that era. Like, you know, it was in the 2000s, or I guess when is
it was later because that album,
Dr. Apache.
Yeah, I listened to that for a whole summer while I was house sitting for my uncle out in Long Island.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Because I'm one of those people that, like, when I get an album and I like it,
yeah,
I listen to it over and over and over.
I'm doing that with Broadcast,
again.
that first Broadcast album right now. I just cannot stop listening to it.
I'll do it forever. I mean, I've currently, have you heard of this band Durant Jones and the Indications?
No.
That's what I've been listening to it for like 4 months.
Oh, dig. Okay.
Yeah, 4 months. I haven't even taken it out of my car.
Man,
I do that.
I'm
I'll get stuck on something and
that,
I'll just go.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's my question here. What made you name drop Sir Monty Rock III?
On which? Wait, on
me and Barbara Stanwyck. Discotheques and all the
Discotheques. Man, I've got this record that I bought on Cutout.
I had that 45 when I was a kid.
Okay, yeah, I've got this record. I've still got it, and I love this record. It's such a just cast off of consumer society, and it's something that and I love this record so much. It's Pickwick Records hit after hit, and it was also like the soundtrack of some shitty movie that's so shitty that I don't think anyone has ever seen it. It's a soundtrack, and it's got Gary Glitter, and it's got Hello, the band Hello.
Right.
It's got them, and it's got Discotheques and the Sexolettes, and it's got the Glitter song, the Gary Glitter song on there is I Love You Love. Do you know that song?
No.
I love that fucking song. It's like it's got the Glitter Band, and it's a big sing along song, and it's got that weird, like, strangely shitty and simultaneously awesome drum sound. It's really disco. It's like this kind of weird malformed, like, cancerous sort of offshoot of disco or something. It's like boom, 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 boom.
Well, many of his songs had a similar sort of groove.
Yeah. But anyway, it's got that on there. Anyway, Discotheques and the Sexolettes are on there, and I Want to Dance with You.
Right. I had that 45 when I was a kid.
Yeah. And I used to listen to it, and that one I would listen to, like the Gary Glitter thing. I was like, man, y'all, this is my jam. Like, if anybody's talk smack about this song, there might be a problem. But like the Discotheque song, I loved it, but I thought it was hilarious, and I would listen to it.
He was hilarious. He used to be on the Tonight Show all the time.
So that Monty Rock, that's who that is?
That's his name, Sir Monty Rock III.
Man.
If you look at his album, it says Discotheques and the Sexolettes featuring Sir Monty Rock III.
Okay.
He was on Carson all the time, and he was always wearing furs. He was kind of like Rip Taylor without the comedy act, you know.
He was fantastic.
And he was very outwardly gay without being ashamed of it at all. He was one of the very, very first, I'd say, other than Liberace, that gay performer that you could tell was gay, and he didn't care if you could
My
tell.
very conservative parents had a Liberace Christmas album.
Yeah, they didn't.
And he was like, 12th the night
his
before
fans,
Christmas.
his fans were able to completely block that out.
Yeah.
Most of them had no idea or assumed that he wasn't, and I don't care. That's great. I, on the other hand, had very liberal parents.
Okay.
I grew up in a house where if I used any sort of racial anything, my mom would have kicked my ass across.
See, it was the opposite in our house. My parents were products of the Jim Crow South. God love them. I love my parents and everything, but
Well, yeah, you're a product of your upbringing, and you can't help it.
And we were like mostly educated on army-based schools that were in the 60s and 70s were very integrated. Black, white, Hispanic.
Right.
This kid's from Germany. This kid's from England. Everybody's from all over the place. And if you had a problem with like somebody that was dark-skinned or of another race or of another ethnicity, man, that shit just wasn't going to work. It wasn't going to fly. And then I'd go home and I'd hear my parents say off-color things, and I'd be like, my consciousness can't exist in two places at once, so there was always that sort of antagonism there.
Well, my dad worked for the post office, and the post office would have these various functions where all the families would gather, and there were several mixed race marriages amongst the post office. And my mom was scared to fucking death that me or my brother was going to say the dumbest thing ever, and it would be horribly offensive.
Oh, wow.
So she pulled us aside. She's like, "Look."
Yeah.
And she was very serious about us not judging people by the way they looked.
Wow.
Have you ever seen the movie Imitation of Life?
Marjorie.
Yes.
My mom made me
Which
watch
version?
the newer one. The one from the
Have
Douglas,
I seen that?
the Douglas Sirk one.
The one with Sandra Dee or the one?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
So my mom made me watch that, okay?
Oh, really?
Yeah, because she wanted me to not be like that.
Oh, wow.
So that's my mom.
I know about that movie.
Yeah, well, at the end, her mom dies and she realizes that she's been shitty to her the whole time because she's black, and like,
Passing as white.
yeah, her daughter is like can pass as white, so she does because she's ashamed of her mom. So the whole movie, she's like ashamed of her mom. Brings her lunch to school one day, and she's sitting there amongst this class of white kids, and this black woman's bringing her lunch. It's like this linchpin scene in the movie where she's just got this look on her face like, I hate you for being here. And then like she's got like a stripper job, right? And her mom shows up, and then like this guy who's been doing her whatever says, like literally, he goes, I didn't know you were out here, and he pushes her. I mean, this is a
Okay, I didn't see that. I want to remember that.
This is a real hardcore movie for its time.
We need to watch that.
But anyway, so at the end, of course, mom dies. There's a scene at the end where mom visits her one last time and says, look, I'm never going to bother you again. I know you hate me. I know you don't want to acknowledge me, but I just want you to know that no matter what, I still love you. Goodbye. Mom leaves and dies like 2 weeks later. Okay? At the end of the movie, this chick is like leaping on the coffin, going like, ah! And my mom was like, you watch this.
Wow.
And I'm like,
well, that's
what's going on?
yeah. That's pretty cool, man. That's
yeah. I'm definitely a product of my mom. So we used to stay up and watch horror movies all the time, and
that's really cool.
Yeah. My dad was a little less cool, but we get along fine.
Right.
All right, so now here's where it starts getting confusing for me.
Yeah, it kind of is for me too.
Okay, because Dr. Apache, it seems it came out under a different name with other songs on it in another country. Is that possible? Or am I some of my imagination?
Okay. I'll tell you what I know about the trail that leads to Dr. Apache.
Okay, well, because then there's a covers album too, isn't there? Isn't there?
Oh yeah. Let's rock, rave, and shout with
Yeah,
Lowell.
because it seems like part of that and part of Dr. Apache ended up on an album called what? Under the Sun? Am I right?
Okay.
Well,
I mean, I'm gonna have some gray areas there. There are some boots. There's some bootlegs.
Mm-hmm.
Under the Sun, maybe one up. Is Under the Sun?
it seems to be
Is
most.
it Like
if
the
not-
Sun?
Okay, that's it.
Okay, Like the Sun that has photography of a pretty girl outside and everything's all
The one
kind
I
of
saw,
sun
the one I saw, I think just had a picture of a sun on the front, maybe.
Okay.
But I could be wrong.
There-
But the
okay.
track list made it look like it was most of Dr. Apache, if not all of it, and then some of the cover songs from the other one.
There's some like some of these micro labels have put things out that I have not had much involvement in. Some of them are straight flat out bootlegs. There's a thing that came out on a Spanish label called Snap Records called Silver and Gold, and it's like it's a collection, and ain't nothing illegal about that.
And they never asked for permission or anything.
They made a plan with Jeremy Morris at Jam Records,
I see.
and they made an agreement but it was overseas, and it was a Spanish label. What is it with Spain?
Spain, man, I'm telling you, they're music lovers over there.
Well, they are, but I can't get them to make anything cool to happen for me. They want to take my labor and my commodities, and they don't want to let me come over there and play, and they don't want to pay me for my work. I don't because
Cooper.
there's a Spanish band called Cooper.
They copied his look too.
Man, dude, they really did. It was real weird. I got contacted. Cooper, I think, is actually the name of an artist, and then he's got a band, and it's called Cooper or whatever. But they're a Spanish band, and they're power pop, and they're very mod. They'll like have this sort of mod consciousness or whatever. But anyway, they put out an album. They did an album, and the guy contacted me. His English was pretty good. I can't speak Spanish at all. That's my bad. But he contacted me. And he said, "Hey, I wanted to know if it's okay with you if the artist Cooper, releases their version of the song Silver Dollar Sunday." And I was like, "Yeah, man, that's fine.
Sure.
Put it out.
Get the word out."
And he's like, "Okay, that's cool. You don't want to do any kind of paperwork or anything?" And I thought about it. I was like, "Nah, man, it's cool. Put it out. Put it on your record. Put it out. Sell it. Sell it at shows. Sell it online. Hope it does real good for you. Because I'm a BMI artist. You know what I mean? That's all kind of. It's all been. I did my paperwork on that. So it's like, man, if you make money off of your physical recording off of that, that's real cool. I don't have a problem with that." And he's like, "Okay, well that's really nice. I appreciate you saying that because we've already recorded it and it was either already released or they were getting ready to drop it." And I was like, "Oh, okay, well, I guess that's cool. I already gave you permission, so since you've already gone ahead and done it." And he's like, "Well, while we're at it, like our guy, he wrote like the Spanish language lyrics. So he wants to get a piece of your song. He wants to get some of the publishing on your song." Yeah. And I was like, "Wait a minute, man. Are you fucking shitting me with
Well,
this?"
that's kind of sneaky.
Yeah. And I was just like, "Well, okay, first of all, no. I gave you my song and you had already done it," which I think is maybe kind of like, tantamount sneaky, right? Like, it would have been nice if you asked before you went through the whole entire process of creating this commodity to put out on the market. You want to get some of my publishing? I said, "Dude, I have never sold anybody my publishing on any of my songs ever. I know people who have come into like fast, big money like that. Maybe if I was a smarter businessman, I'd cut somebody a publishing deal, but I've just never done it. I own 200% of all of my songs that have ever been released. You know how that works." So like, and I've followed through and I said, "Sir, I am not, in fact, a capitalist. That is not how I operate. I don't make money off of other people's work, and you, sir, are not going to make money off of my work. You get nothing. Good day, sir. Thank you very much." But yeah.
I
but
love it when people say that. I said good day.
Good day, sir. But yeah. But anyway, he was like, "Wow, okay, fine." He sent me a bunch of copies of stuff, and the record where they're doing like their Spanish language, they're sort of lackluster, honestly. It's like they did what I knew they would have. When I first wrote that song, I wrote it in E, and it's kind of low. It was sort of this Beatle kind of bullshit song. And I was like, it's pretty cool, but it's kind of meh. And I brought it up to just like top of the ouchie register. This is back when I was a smoker. It's like, man, I can barely fucking sing that, but it actually sparkles at that. Like, it's worth it. It hurts to sing that high, but it's worth it because that makes that song a better song. And it was like, man, they're gonna do it in E. They did it in E because the motherfucker can't sing it that high. Anyway, so yes, it's like, yeah, I knew you were gonna do it in E, motherfucker. Anyway, and then like you look on the record and the guitar when we did that, when the Lolas did the 2002 Japan tour, I was over there, and this was during the period when I like barely even had a place to live at stateside. I was over there. I had no money. Daiska that brought us over there, he was paying for everything. He was feeding me and everything. And he bought me a shirt when I was over there. I think I just went over there with the clothes on my back.
Right.
And he bought me this really cool mod-looking blue and red striped shirt from a vintage clothing store. I was like, oh, that's really cool. Thanks, Daiska. And I wore that shirt the entire time we were over there. Every picture of me from the whole tour, I'm wearing that. And like they did like promo merch and stuff. They did like, they drew cartoons of Lola Tim wearing that blue and red striped mod looking Sure. Anyway, like fast forward to like a zillion years later, this band Cooper's coming out. They've got this guitar player with, I had kind of a Beatle cut at the time. They had a guy with like brown hair. He's got a Beatle cut. And he's got this blue and red striped shirt, and they're going la do da, singing in a Spanish, la 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 la, and I was just like, hey, you gotta be shitting me. But I'm persona non grata over there.
Right.
You know, I don't know. It's weird.
I think maybe you just haven't contacted the right person, because I mean,
guess.
they have power pop is actually really big in Spain.
Yeah.
And they have festivals all the time.
I wouldn't mind playing Spain before they like bring Franco back from the grave and put him in power, and it's not cool to play over there anymore. Europe's getting kind of sketchy these days.
Everywhere is getting kind of sketchy these days. So
a lot of fist pumps during this.
We've just been talking about how depressing it is to even just turn on the news. I'll just like scan
every
the news.
day.
I scan the news just so I can kind of get an idea of what's happening.
Yeah.
And then I'm done. I can't just sit and ruminate in it
I
anymore.
have a picture and a video of Cooper. I have it pulled up.
Oh,
well,
okay,
hold
yeah,
on.
yeah.
I'll come over there and take
you
a peek
see
at
that,
it.
yeah.
Okay, so there was a covers record, right? Let's
rock
and
around
that
and
came
shout.
out here. Was that
What that was, okay, this was the thing, like, Jeremy Morris, Jam Records, did, like, those first few albums, and then there were a lot of comps and stuff, and that sort of thing, and that stuff sort of caught on in Japan, and then Jeremy struck up a deal. There's probably details in the story that I'm just not even aware of.
Okay.
But Jeremy made some kind of connection with Daisuke Kanbei, who has Wizard and Vinyl Records. And this is still going back to the early 2000s. And there was interest in these Lola's records that had come out on Jam Records. And Daisuke was reissuing them, and then he did new reissues of them with like new cover art and stuff, and they were cheaper and easier to get, I think, in Japan, and like they were selling them at Tower Records in Tokyo and stuff, which is sort of notable because like Jam is like a micro label. Everything at that stage was just micro, really, really small time stuff, zero budget, and here, I'll send you a check for $15 or whatever kind of stuff. And but anyway, so there's like this upsurge of interest in Lola's, and that stuff got issued over there. And Jeremy on the phone, Jeremy's like, well, this guy Daisuke, he was calling him Daisuke, his name's Daisuke, Daisuke, he wants to do a tour of the Lola's in Japan, if that sounds like something you'd like to do. And I thought it was a joke. I was like, yeah, right, like that's gonna happen, especially in light of my history with getting over to Spain, which still has never happened. And I was like, okay, fine, you tell Daisuke that if he wants to do a Lola's tour of Japan, that's great. We've got an excellent band. We're ready to come over there. He pays for everything. He pays for flights. He's going to schlep us around when we're over there. He's going to pay for us to have lodgings and accommodations, and he's going to feed us. If he agrees to do all of those things, sure, we'll do a Japan tour. The short version of the story is the next thing we knew.
That's standard. When they bring people over, they usually pay for everything. Are you familiar with? Me and him did a movie about the legendary Stardust Cowboy. Do you know who that is?
Well, I know. I'm very hyper aware of the legendary Stardust Cowboy. I didn't know you guys did a movie about.
Oh yeah, I'll send you a link. I know. I just talked to him a couple of days ago.
You're shitting me.
I talked to him all the time. It was his birthday last week, and I sent him some NASA stickers and a coffee cup that shows the constellations when it gets hot. So he's so funny. But when he plays, about once or twice a year, they'll fly him over to Germany, or they'll fly him over to Australia.
Does he behave himself when he's over there?
He's the ledge.
He's the ledge, man.
Yeah. When we get done, we go out to dinner.
That's so great.
Ask me any question you want up on the ledge, because I've known him since what, '89?
Wow.
Yeah, that's a long time.
Yeah. I mean,
he traumatized Lise Fancher. She went to see him in a club, and he got naked. And
he does that all the time.
Yeah.
He strips at the end of the show.
Yeah. Lisa was not cool with that. I was just like, oh man.
Burnett didn't like it either.
Yeah. Lisa was like, do not talk about him. I was like, man, but she's like, no, just Just like you couldn't even tie. She was just completely
Well, you know,
traumatized.
Klaus Florid is his bass player.
Oh no shit.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. No, that's great.
Yeah.
Klaus Florid. I guess you know him, right?
Super nice guy.
Man,
I did a podcast with him.
Yeah.
It's the only one that ever fucked up. It's like something happened. There was some sort of weird glitch or something.
Oh, no.
So it this great. He used to play with Billy Squier.
Oh no
Remember
shit.
Billy Squier? Yeah, he was in a band like in the late '60s with Billy Squier.
Oh,
And,
like pre.
Or maybe
what
it
were-
was Billy Thorpe. I'm sorry, it was Billy Thorpe.
Okay.
Or Children of the Sun. And
Oh shit. Okay.
yeah,
That's
and,
pretty awesome.
They did demos for Columbia and all this stuff, and like I went back to play, and it was like for the whole thing.
Oh no.
Yeah, I lost the whole podcast.
Hey, I saw them like Latter Days Dead Kennedys at the Boiler Room, which place all ages spaces doesn't exist here anymore. In the probably early 2000s, I chaperoned my stepdaughter to see the Dead Kennedys at an all ages show, and they had Courtship of Eddie's Father guy from. Yeah. Anyway, he was on lead vocals, and man, he did a stalwart job. That was a great hardcore show, and they played really well. They had like really A-team guys.
It's all the original members except for the singer.
Yeah. It was all. It was the black drummer.
And he gave me the lowdown about exactly what happened back then, and it all came down to money. It all came down to just basically Jello said. Actually, Jello didn't say anything. He just kept all the money. And then when they said, "Hey, don't you owe us some money?" He like cut off contact with them.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. But yeah, and Klaus they were a really good lot.
Yeah. He if you ever see him again, he's super nice and easy to talk to. So. Okay, so.
So we're trying to piece together the trail.
Some of these mystery albums that I.
Yeah.
Because like the covers one, I wanted to congratulate you for doing "I Need You."
Okay.
And also, there's no
I'm
such
sure
thing.
that's true.
There's no such thing as a bad version of "Have Love Will Travel," and yours is right up there.
I had fun making that recording. I played all the damn instruments on that. I'm playing the drums, bass, guitar, and I was doing what you're not supposed to do. I was running the digital equipment hot because it was just an in the moment thing, and I was like, I'm gonna drive this microphone. It sounds
It's
good.
good loud. It's good
You
loud.
can hear the diaphragm in that microphone just going.
And I listen
like
to
that.
shit way too loud. Believe me.
Yeah. That was
I'll
fun.
tell you as well.
Man, I appreciate it. Daiska did those. Daiska did. What happened was like I did Something You Ought to Know. That's on Jam, isn't it?
I don't know.
I think it's on Jam Records. I think Something You Ought to Know came out on Jam. Like all this stuff I had pretty good business dealings with Daiska up to that point, and then he did that tour, which was really cool and everything. So he and I were just all warm fuzzy. Everything was really cool with me and Daiska. And Daiska said, I want to release the next Lola's album. And what he did is he basically paid me like, this is something that's unheard. I don't know if anybody even still does this now. It's probably not cool to talk about money, but he just paid me like a lump sum of money to license the album. And it was like I was like, yeah, I'm cool with this. Here, you can have the album and do whatever you want with it. And I bought gear for my studio and stuff, and it was all like really happy. And so we had that relationship going there for a little while. So we did Dr. Apache, and then we did Let's Rock, Raven, Shout with the Lolas. Man, maybe that was it. Was that like the last thing until this newest one that's come out?
I think so. But like I say, there was
Yeah.
that. There was the other one that was like a mixture of the two. That was confusing to me.
It's confusing to me too.
Yeah. Okay.
I didn't have a direct hand in that. Yeah.
Okay. So then lots of years have gone by since that and the new one.
Yeah.
Have you just been lazy?
Okay, that's a reasonable question, and here's the answer. I've been very busy doing numerous projects. What was starting to happen for me, like during that era, like around, like I didn't ever stop loving that kind of music, but I got burned out on not doing projects, but I got burned out on doing those kinds of projects. Like, I'm trying to think how to preface this or how to put it together. The indie rock scene, especially locally, had really there's this there's this theme of class and class hatred and class divisions that keeps kind of becoming a part of the story as far as where I'm concerned, and working with people like John P. Strom and people like that, and this, I'm over here and you're over there kind of thing, and like really even going as far back as like the carnival season days, there was like I would experience that. I mean, it was a consciousness thing, but by the time of whereas I had done several several Lola's releases, and I was really starting to get tired of the indie rock market. It seemed like a cottage market for people who were financially comfortable. It was that way around here. There were these precious indie twee pop bands, and they really thought that the Lolas were kind of this regressive sort of, well, you're just ruffians and rubes or whatever, and like Tim Boykin's weirdo, and I'm like, yes, I am. I'm a weirdo. I'm low-born. I am not of your class. It was very much about that, and and also, I mean, my consciousness was starting to change in a lot of ways. This is gonna sound really weird, but like in 2002, I stopped smoking cigarettes, and my consciousness changed because I was a really heavy cigarette smoker. Going back in the story, I'm a really, really severe alcoholic. I shouldn't be alive. The kind of alcoholism I have is a death sentence to most people that have it. It's really weird that I'm sitting here talking to you guys. Anyway, so
I'm glad you are.
Thanks. I mean, I am too. I'm glad I'm talking to you guys. There's a lot of things I'm not glad about, but I'm glad I'm sitting here. I'm glad about her, and I'm glad about you guys. But anyway, I quit smoking cigarettes in 2002. And it really, I was like, this is the weirdest, most difficult thing I've ever. It was harder than quitting drinking, and it really, and like, like in a lot of ways, I armored myself with cigarette smoke. If I was awake, I had a cigarette going for a bunch of years, and I didn't have that, and like my way of filtering what was happening externally, like really started to change, and I always loved hard music and harsh music too. I always had a penchant for it. I've got my own weird Tim Boykin take on it, but I started getting more and more attracted to metal and harsh music, and I started going and like if you go back a ways, I was in like this punk band that didn't try to be melodic at all, right. And so I started going, I feel like I've been missing out on making angry noise for a lot of years. So that's what I was doing during those years. There's actually a third Shame Idols album that's it's pretty good. That was very much, they're melodic songs, but
did it ever come out?
It's on iTunes. You can download it.
Oh, okay.
It's called The Light Is Always On. It's pretty good.
All right,
it's pretty
cool.
good. It's not the best thing I ever did. The guys that are playing, like the old Shame Idols guys are playing on it, and the bass player from Working Mothers that went in the joint was out of the joint, so he was in there. And I was like, you were always supposed to be in this band.
Well, I'm assuming before punk rock, you were probably into like the same stuff that I was: Kiss, Black Sabbath, Blue Oyster Cult,
AC/DC, Aerosmith,
exactly.
All that kind of stuff. So yeah.
So you still probably got a soft spot for it, right?
Always had a soft spot for it.
Remind me to tell you my Kiss Alive story.
Okay, yeah. I gotta hear that. But anyway, like so I'm like this like going through this molting phase of consciousness and without cigarette smoke, and like there had been a metal scene around like Birmingham, and I was aware of it. There were people around the scene that I had known for a long time. People like, there was a guy named Richard Burrow, and like he and I always really liked each other. I was like, we were both just kind of like, I'm not sure what you are, but I like what you're doing. I think it's unique and creative. And he was like that about me. We were like that about each other and stuff. And like and then like looking back, I was like, oh, he was an extreme metal guy. That's what he was doing. And like, so there were people like that had influence on me, and so I got involved in like the local metal scene, and I've done several projects, and I continue to do that now. You're aware of some of that. You're aware of Avavago.
Yeah, the stuff that you put on Facebook at Mothface, right?
Mothface is that's an ongoing thing.
Yeah, that was all. Those subjects were all coming up next.
Yeah. So it's not really apocryphal, but it breaks the continuity of poppy stuff,
right,
where it's there's melodies and guitars and stuff, but the point of it is to beat down. And so the first one up was a band called Annexed Asylum, and it was these like blue collar kids that were much younger than me, but I was bringing these like guitar chops into it. They were really good too. It really changed my guitar playing, and we were living in a really rough part of town at that time, and like, oh man, that was an interesting phase of my life, and I was like really trying to do like revolutionary things with my guitar playing. I was just like, man, I really developed shitty habits being a punk rock guitar player. Mm-hmm. These young metal guys, like, they're not like book smart about music, but they're like street smart about music as far as making things work in the most proficient way possible. And so I was like really, kind of like the character Kiddo in what was it, Kill Bill, and she goes and the guy with the long beard is teaching her how to be like it was like that, and she's falling asleep and waking up going boom, and like on her bloody fist. I was doing that about guitar because I was just like, I've got to be like a guitar player, like a deadly velocity guitar player.
And that's got to be fun.
It was super fun.
Yeah.
It was super fun, and it's still very much a part of my world now. Now everything's kind of all happening in the same world because I came back and did like a Lola's album, and so that's going on, and I'm in these metal projects, and it's really weird. And I kind of wondered for a while, I was like, are the people in the different scenes going to accept that I'm doing both of these? And for the most part, they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I went through phases when I was younger.
Yeah.
I'm only gonna listen to punk, or I'm only gonna listen to this.
Yeah.
But then as you get older, I get some nostalgic thing where I'm going, I'm gonna listen to this old Blue Oyster Cult album. And I still like it.
Oh, it's that's so brilliant.
And as I get older, most people I know are not pigeonholing themselves into one genre. Most people I know listen to a little this, a little of that.
Yeah.
And then I think that makes life better.
I can't see any reason, unless you're like making bokus of money by being, in the Stray Cats or something. I can't see any reason to just limit yourself to doing like one type of thing. I always think of the Beatles. The Beatles, you name it, they did it. They did country, they did insurrectionary noise, they did everything.
The Beatles are almost always the exception to the rule in almost any musical.
They got to do it in one band because they were that damn successful.
And they just were lucky to hook up with the exact right people at the exact right time.
Right. But as far as doing the metal stuff, so there's been if you want to delve into that and follow some chronologies, there was Annexed Asylum. That band managed to release one. It's sort of like all over the place. You can tell that it's a beast trying to stumble to its feet,
right?
Technically, but it's a sonically really good sounding album. Or not an album. We did an EP. And it's all on YouTube. If you look it up, it's all on YouTube. And so there was Annexed Asylum, and then when that band broke up, me and the young singer, who was also a really good guitar player and really brilliant at composing songs, and he made me think about things that I'd never thought about because he was metal, so he didn't think in terms of like verse chorus. And that sort of thing. So, I was going through all this, I didn't even know you could think like that way. And so we had a super weird band called Throng of Shoggoths that was influenced, and early on influenced by the horror fiction of Marjorie, who is it?
Lovecraft.
Thanks, H.P. Lovecraft. Thank you, Moneypenny.
She's really handy. No wonder you keep her around.
Oh my God! I go, yeah. I don't go anywhere and she's not there. And if you see me, she's there too. But yeah. So we did that, and we had some great experiences with that. That band was really volatile, and we broke up. And then there was a band called Ithanoth that was really worthy. That band never got anything out. But that band turned into a Vavago. And we released an impossible. I challenge anyone to get their hands on a copy of the CD released. We released an album's length CD that was it was good. It was good performances, but it was really poorly recorded. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that band broke up, and I hooked up with a brilliant young drummer and record technician named Brian Lee Arant. And he said, this is a good project. We should keep this going. And we worked on an Avavago album that just came out very recently. We worked on it for about 4 years. Not 4 years solid. Everybody has to work. He works in a factory. Sure. He makes fire extinguishers. But we kept coming back to it. And after about 4 years, we finally got it out. And so that's new. And that band is going. We rehearsed yesterday. We're writing new material as we speak. I intend to keep doing Lola's stuff, but I'm going to keep doing the metal stuff because it's so much fun.
I was about to say, it sounds like fun. And it also sounds like you've kind of reached a place where you're comfortable doing different stuff.
Yeah. I'm even contemplating maybe a new project, a new record project. I'm trying to think how to go about it. I started writing a song the other day, and I was like, well, this is obviously a Lola's song, but it's like that project's been around for a while, and the lyrical content is like, this can't be a girl or a heartbreak song, and it can't be a silly fun song. I've done too many of those. I need to just do something else just to go fire a different neuron in my brain. But yeah. Okay, anyway, there might be a new artist to emerge who does like folky pop stuff with like all Marxist lyrics.
Well, when this happens, you let me know.
I will.
So I don't miss it.
There's already a song in the works.
Okay. Yeah, we're good if you want to go grab something to eat.